got
today
there.
it's going to get complicated. So I have this is actually my grandfather's shot glass. So this I don't know how old it is really, but at least 1960s.
Shot
So
glass.
my family's Irish. What do you want? It's actually not a shot glass. It's the sort of the tumbler like you'd get a shot in, and it would be
Yeah.
But it's anyway. So it is gin, a generous amount, probably too much, but whatever. And grapefruit juice and soda water.
Is there too much on a Sunday night
big
when
mug.
you have to work early in the morning?
I don't have to work tomorrow. I'm taking next week mostly off. We're actually going to be down in your area.
Oh, nice.
And I have been given the responsibility of arranging for us to meet somewhere to do something.
Mm.
Cindy has suggested bubble tea at the mall. I have no idea how you feel about bubble tea. I don't like it that much. So
Honestly, actually, I haven't had it before, but
no?
I really don't care.
Basically fruit juice with tapioca in it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a while since I've actually seen you in person, so
Yeah.
that'd be nice.
It just occurred to me that I'm pouring all of these liquids and likely to get slightly intoxicated, like basically right over top of my computer. This may not be wise. I should
Be fun,
perhaps
though.
do this before the episode starts.
Yeah, whatever. I'm shocker. Just drinking the ciders today again. I'm saving myself for Thursday. We're doing a big staff event Thursday, and I sense that things might go sideways.
Uh-oh. Are you laying off most of your staff?
No. No. Our staff events just, I mean, they were actually like less tame before I started working there.
Oh.
The
Well, you
whole
are in
office. I mean, it was
advertising, technically, right?
less so now, but when I
Kinda.
started, like it was a full service ad agency that was in the process of turning into a full web shop, and has just become more of that. And we haven't had a major staff event since before the pandemic, so.
So this is a gin.
So we're all gonna have a big barbecue, and like a bunch of us, I think I mentioned before, are gonna kind of sit around the campfire and have a little bit of a jam session going, and should be fun. But we always get a little tipsy during those.
It's actually nice to have a job where you can think about, hey, I'm going to spend an evening with my coworkers and not be, I have to spend an evening with my coworkers.
Yeah.
Because we've definitely had those jobs.
We definitely have. We definitely have. So we don't really have a topic today. So we're actually recording like less than a week after the last time we made up the second half of our recording after an act of God, but
It's like, what, 3 days or 4 days or something?
I don't know. Something.
Yeah.
But you mentioned something yesterday, and it got the wheels turning, and I thought we would do a full Podbag episode. But an AI Overlord Podbag episode where all the questions come courtesy of Chat GPT, because that's popular and should earn us lots of clicks and stuff, right?
Yeah, whatever. It's nerdy.
Yeah, whatever.
I for one, welcome our new AI overlord.
Right. No, I've talked about Chat GPT before, and I actually think, once you ignore the buzzwords and bullshit, like I think it's actually pretty cool. I'm not worried about my job. Maybe my job will change and adapt in the future. But for the type of stuff I use it for, which is what it's built for, a language model, just as a hobby, it's been pretty cool. So I gave it a little bit of context, like, here's our show, here's what it's called, general discussions, spit out some questions. And they did. And about 2/3 of them were great. A third of them were just repetitious crap. Asking, conflating nerddom with a certain segment of nerddom. Like there's about 4 questions about like the type of cosplay maybe you have worn. And
I have. I have actually done cosplay. And it only came up because I was watching an interview with Carrie Elways today about they did the reunion thing for the Princess
the
Bride.
Princess Bride. Mm-hmm.
And we did our 10th wedding anniversary. We renewed our vows, and we did it dressed up as characters from. Well, I was dressed as the Dread Pirate Roberts, but it was a pirate wedding,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone who came had to dress up. So I guess I technically have done cosplay.
I guess I've technically done it too, and actually in some really really nerdy ways. I think when you do Halloween as an adult, like even though it's Halloween, like anytime you're throwing a costume on at that point, like dude, you're over 16. It's cosplay.
Kinda.
And I put a lot of effort one year. This was back in the call center days, but when I was running a training department, and our department decided to take it really, really seriously. And I like scratch built, so like put the effort into making a costume, which is why I think it really qualifies as cosplay. To play like a old Republic era Sith Lord,
Oh,
Mark Aragnos, big like horns and shit, and like I
okay.
turned a mag light into a lightsaber. Yeah.
Hey,
Hey,
yeah. Well, we're
you don't
nerds.
look impressed. Yeah, you
I
don't
mean,
look impressed at all.
I mean,
Fuck you.
I was there, I guess, but I don't remember this, and I haven't seen any photos, so I'm not sure it ever
No,
happened.
no, no. This wasn't. This was the other company. So
Oh, okay. All
yeah,
right.
yeah, you weren't there for that.
I never worked for them.
Nope, you did not.
Well, to be fair, I never really worked for Stream either. I was employed there.
Anyway, so I did a sort of a just a cursory skim of the questions, selected a few, refined a few to kind of be tabletop themed, but most of them are just general nerddom, and we're going to go through them. And if the episode sucks, it's your fault.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess. I mean, I'm sure that Ian will enjoy it, and I'm not sure that anyone else is watching. So
We're good then.
yeah, we're fine. Hi,
All
Ian.
right. First question from ChatGPT. If you could attend any fictional school or academy, which one would you choose and what subject or skill would you study?
That's a hard one. You know, I mean,
And
like,
this is why it's nerdy, not the answers to the questions, but how we overthink the question
oh
and
yeah, yeah. This is, I mean, your first instinct, just because of kind of how much an academy sort of school centered thing it is, would be Hogwarts. Like, I'm not very much of a Harry Potter fan. I enjoyed the movies. The books were reasonably good. Like, I don't know. And it's funny because I can't really think of any other ones off the top of my head.
so I have to provide caveats for my answer. Can I take the stuff that I've learned there and bring it back and use
Oh,
it? Right?
mm-hmm.
Like, and this is probably going to come up again a couple times in these series of questions because I'm predictable, but like Starfleet Academy. Could I
Ooh,
study engineering at Starfleet Academy and take that knowledge and bring it back and do something with it?
that'd be neat.
I
That'd
mean,
be neat.
assumably, if you're creating rules for the question like that, you would also have to say, "Can I go learn magic at Hogwarts and come back and
Yeah.
cast spells and shit?" Either one of those would be good answers, I think.
I don't. Here's the funny thing, though. Like, if I was to go to a fictional sort, if we expand the question to the idea of, okay, we're going to enter some fictional universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if like there's an academy there that I could study at, but I mean, I would much prefer to go to somewhere like Tolkien's universe than Star Wars or Hogwarts or really even anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, or the like whatever high school the Teen Titans go to.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be neat.
Yeah, and getting back to analyzing the question, I actually asked this question of my wife today, just because I was
Oh,
talking a little bit about what we were doing, and she immediately went Hogwarts, right?
it's the
But
first.
where I'm thinking about, well, what are the things that I can learn there, and what can I do with this knowledge that I'm unlocking? She's just like, no, I want to eat in that big dining hall thing they had in the movies, and like have owls and magic shit flying around. Like she's totally thinking of it from an experiential standpoint,
Yep.
being in that, like immersed in that universe, and I'm just like, i'm, I'm going to school to learn shit. I'm such a
Yeah.
fucking nerd.
Well, and I could approach it from sort of a similar angle too. Is like, what are the other students going to be like? Like, because my experience in high school was the stuff that I learned in class was, or I mean, even like university, college, right? Most of the things that I learned from other students.
Hmm.
So I'm really thinking about this from the point of view of like, what students do I want to spend time with? And honestly, it's not the people from Starfleet.
No, actually, yeah, like I got to clarify that, because like Starfleet, if it wasn't for the ability to maybe learn something interesting that I could bring back, would be the lamest answer. Like
Yeah.
100%, because I'm either just going to end up lame or recruited into some sort of evil secret organization that's taken over Starfleet this year, because
Well, I mean, like if
those are
you,
the only two options.
yeah. Well, I mean, what other school, like even if it's not ones that we want to attend, what other fictional like academies or schools can we think of? Like I'm thinking of the Jedi Academy, but I'm,
Oh,
I mean,
I mean,
that one's
you're
pretty lame
stretching the
though.
definition of academy, but like it's
I
got it
am.
in the name.
Yep, it's the Jedi Academy.
Ooh, that's a good one. Um, so do you know much about the Strixhaven stuff from was pulled over from Magic the Gathering into newer D&D campaign
Um,
setting?
there's isn't there a board game that Strixhaven lends its name to? Or
Oh,
no, that's
maybe
Gloomhaven. Sorry.
that's Gloomhaven. Yeah, no, Strixhaven. Imagine. I mean, obviously, it's inspired by things like Harry Potter, but it's not. It's not necessarily like such a for kids kind of thing.
Oh, there was a series of books that I read. Oh my God, what were they called? Oh, my wife put me onto them, I think. And there was a series. It was a magic school. And Harry Potter is highly derivative of a whole bunch of earlier work, by the way.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I remember reading some of it when I was in school. But there's an academy, and it's very similar to Hogwarts, except it's a little bit more grown up. It's like a collegiate type academy.
Mm-hmm.
And the main character is a young lady who has completely mundane parents, but gets a scholarship to the school and then shows up, and her roommate is like super magical, and they do all these things. There's all this, like, it's literally the same story.
Mm-hmm.
It was really good, and I can't remember what it was called. But yeah, I mean, the Jedi Academy would be like the actual academy would be super lame, but coming at it from your point of view, think of what you could learn.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
All right.
feel the power.
Yes. Let the hate flow through you. All right. Second question. If you could have a conversation with a fictional character, who would it be, and what burning question would you ask them?
Mm. It would be the youngest prince of Amber, and I would ask him, why a dozen eggs? Have you ever read Roger Zelazny's
No,
Nine
I
Princes
haven't.
of Amber? I highly recommend them.
Mm-hmm.
They're very much a product of their time. You can skip over all of the uh, what is it? Stream of consciousness poetry that's in the middle of everything. But
Ooh,
this,
there's a big sell.
oh yeah, you can literally skip it. It's like, okay, it's half a page, whatever. Just skip that. Get back to the meat of the story, because the
Mm-hmm.
story is interesting. The world building is interesting. The idea that all of reality as we know it is a reflection of one particular place, and the way that he develops over the course of, I think it's like 9 books or something. Um, how that came to be and how everything fits together and why people are doing what they're doing. And there's an awful lot of intrigue that happens sort of behind the scenes where it's like they're friends, now they're enemies, now they're friends, now they're enemies. Like it's almost like 90210 style of like people are friends and then enemies, and it's like they've forgotten what they did, but it makes sense. Like it's actually done in an adult enough way that it's like, I hate you because of, now I understand why you were behaving that way, and now we're friends because of something else. Anyway, it's been a while since I've read it. And now I actually kind of want to go back and read it.
All right, you said we needed to say something controversial,
Uh
so I'm
oh.
going to do it.
Uh oh. Unpopular opinion incoming.
I would have a conversation with capital G God, and my
Oh.
question would be, what the fuck, man?
I mean, yeah, but which one?
That's why I said capital G God.
Oh, okay.
So whether you take the atheistic or whatever stance and just be like, it's a fucking made up story, invisible sky fairy or whatever, or maybe it exists and our representation and portrayal of him is just purely fabricated, which it is. Read into that how you want, but I would talk to God and ask him, what the fuck are you thinking, dude?
uh, I don't know.
Or
You know what? If I was going to have a conversation with capital G God, I would ask him, "Why are you interested in how much I masturbate?"
well, and if this capital G God existed, I'm sure he would say, or she would say, I'm not. Why the fuck do
Yeah,
you think I give a shit?
I don't know, man. It's written in your book, like the book that is supposed to be the instructions for how it's like literally like. When I think about you, don't touch yourself.
Fan fiction.
The New Testament is Twilight. Yeah,
uh,
that's probably controversial enough.
all right. Sorry for our audience of 3, and I've pissed one of you off statistically. You'll be missed.
Hit
All
like
right,
and
next question.
subscribe.
Hey, blame Chat GPT.
That's true. Yeah. Chat GPT is an atheist.
Like, I can only answer the questions I'm asked. What do you want me to lie to you? All right. There's going to be a few ways to answer this question, and we're probably going to have to explore them. If you had to survive a zombie apocalypse, what 3 fictional characters from any universe would you want on your team?
Mm.
Now, there's the lame answer.
Superman.
Right. The lame answer is, well, let me just make the zombie apocalypse not a thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
uh, Tanya, I asked this question of her too. We just did a little bit of a trial run. I wanted to see what she thought of them. And she's like, oh, well, I just have Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet. He just snap the zombies away. And I'm like, okay, that evades the sort of question, but like, it's a good answer.
Mm-hmm.
So, I could be on team capital G God
Yeah.
or Superman or whatever.
Capital G God would like do an immediate team kill. It was like, I brought the zombies to kill you, dude.
Yeah. Or you could try and come up with okay, we're going to assume that the zombie apocalypse actually happens, that we can't stop it. In that context, who would you want to have on your team? And I think that's a more interesting sort of way. Like I would have picked Q from Star Trek, because just like
Oh yeah.
no zombies anymore. But
Yeah. You know what? I think I want um the 2 guys from Shaun of the Dead. What the heck are their names?
oh,
Uh
yeah,
you know the guys I'm talking to. It's like the new Scotty and his
yeah, yeah.
his
So,
comedy partner.
yeah, I don't remember the character names in it, but
No, neither do I. Well, it's Sean.
yeah,
Um, sorry, Sean.
Simon Pegg. But
So yeah, I'm like I'll stop doing it when you stop laughing. Um, my wife. Oh wait, fictional characters. You know what?
yeah,
I don't want to go
fictional.
through I don't want to go through a zombie apocalypse without my wife.
Yeah,
I really don't. But the L from The Last of Us. Is that her? What's her name?
Ellie.
Ellie.
Ellie. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so Sean and Ellie and who else? Fictional characters. Oh, hmm. Meg from Family Guy, because she deserves a break.
All right. My answers to this are I'm obviously thinking about it too much. The correct answer for number one is obviously something that's not alive, at least not the traditional sense. Data from Star Trek, one of the Terminators, like a machine,
I am Groot.
with the I, I'm going to place like parentheses around the on your team part, right? So the assumption is they're not going to fuck me at the first opportunity. They're right, but I would choose something that's like not going to be harmed by these zombies in any real sense.
7 of 9.
Then I would choose. I'm actually going to go with a different Star Trek character. I'm going to go with Dr. Phlox from Star Trek Enterprise.
Is
And the
that the
reason,
holographic doctor?
no, that's Voyager. No, he's a alien doctor, Denobulan.
Ah,
Of all the doctor characters in Star Trek, he felt the most like a doctor. Like, so I want him there to A, keep me alive from all of the rest of this stuff.
yeah.
And B, he's the Star Trek doctor that I think could probably like with duct tape and popsicle sticks figure out this zombie shit and fix it eventually, you know, without like omnipotent superpowers. And I don't know about the third. The third would just be entertainment value, I think. My
I was trying to.
wife, because, I have to
Yeah.
answer that.
Yeah. Fictional characters now. Oh, wait. Yeah. Fictional characters. She's from
My
Canada. You wouldn't know her.
Oh, that's great. All right, next question. Describe the nerdiest collection you've ever seen or had, whether it's action figures, comic books, or something else entirely.
Hmm. Um, I did have a friend, and friend has to go in finger quotes, in odd, like grade 3 or something, who had a Transformers collection, right? And if you think about like, 6, 7 year old kids, right? You play with your toys. This
Mm-hmm.
kid did not play with his Transformers. They stayed new in the box. That was a very nerdy collection. Not so much because of what it is, because I would have loved to have a Transformers collection, just because of the way he treated it. It's like
Now, was
these
that
things are.
something that was driven by him understanding
Yes.
how collecting worked?
No, that was something that was driven by him, and I like honestly, I think it was probably just like an OCD thing. He couldn't stand to have his stuff touched by anyone else, so it stayed in the
Hmm.
box. Um, like I can't think of any. Like I don't know anyone really who has much of a collection of anything. I mean, my grandmother had a collection of spoons.
My
Now, some of
mother
them were.
actually had a little bit of a spoon collection going when I grew up.
It was a thing. It was the style at the time.
All right.
Yeah. What about you?
So I'm going to cheat with my answer, but it's okay because it's one of the things where like if I won the lottery, like a big lottery, it's like one of the things that would be on my list of ways to waste money. So technically, I'm going to go with a museum, but not like a capital M museum. So, a guy by the name of Neil Thomas in the UK runs a YouTube channel, RMC, used to be called Retro Man Cave. Anyway, he's built essentially like this really cool, sort of open to the public retro computing museum, like going back
Ooh.
to the very old days. And it's built in such a way that like everyth's on display, but you're meant to actually interact and play with it. He's got like old computing magazines that it's like pull these out and read them. Going right back to you know Altair and before.
Mm.
And it's been on my list of things that if I ever won the lottery, I would love to do. Obviously, I talk about focusing, kind of going through a midlife crisis about trying to reacquire some of the things that I've lost from my childhood, some of my old computers and gaming systems and stuff. But I'd like to sort of take that to the logical extreme and build something that, like you can't have a conversation with a lot of younger people about what computing and gaming and entertainment was like back then, because it's almost impossible to like draw the parallels, and sometimes it's just something you have to experience.
There's well, a lot of I think of a lot of the gap in understanding is probably in the idea that it was such a niche hobby,
Hmm.
right? It wasn't like everyone had a PS5 and you just hop online and play with people. Like you had to find somebody. Like I literally remember in high school specifically telling my friends, "Do not tell my parents that we're playing Dungeons and Dragons."
Hmm.
Because they bought 100% into that satanic panic bullshit. Do you remember the chick tracts? And it was the same thing. It was all like, video games are going to rot your brain. It's like, what? In the same way that TV rotted your brain? Like,
Yeah, my parents were never like that. If anything, they really encouraged me getting into that kind of stuff. But I was certainly the kid at school that was trying to enable other kids that had those parents.
yeah.
Like, come here, we're running a Jumpman Junior ladder. It's great. You're going to love it. No, you don't need to go out and play on the swings at recess or whatever it is you're doing. Stay in
First one's
here.
free. Then you
Yeah.
got to pay.
So that's the it's probably not the nerdiest collection, but it is like
It's pretty cool.
my nerdiest
I would really,
collection.
really love to have a model airplane collection. Be super neat.
All right, next question. What is the most outrageous fan theory you've ever come across for a TV show, movie, or book series? And did you secretly hope it was true?
Okay, second part first. Yes, I 100% hoped it was true, and it was the Jar Jar Binks,
Darth Jar Jar, yeah.
Darth Jar Jar. I mean, the bits and pieces of the theory that I saw put together hung together so well and could have been blended into the universe so perfectly, and it would have exonerated the entire Jar Jar arc where you're like, oh, that's why he was there. That's why he always showed up. That's why he, sort of inserted himself
Yeah.
into the whole situation. It would have been great.
I think that was the obvious answer to this question.
Yeah. The sad
It's
thing
too
is
clever to have been George Lucas, though, like from a
oh
just even a writing
yeah.
perspective. So,
Well, who was the stupid guy that we got in the first, it was like, hey, your face is half melted and you're a Sith Lord. Who are you? Where did you come from? Did I have to watch all of the cartoons to figure out who you are? Like,
so we talked about this at work, so I think you probably remember it. After the Phantom Menace came out, but before uh, Attack of the Clones, there was this theory that basically suggested that it wasn't Anakin Skywalker that became Darth Vader, it was Obi-Wan.
oh yeah. And
Like in
then
how we see Obi-Wan sort of embracing anger and stuff in his fight with Darth Maul at the end after Qui-Gon. And yeah, essentially, that they'd swapped places. Anakin assumed his name so that he could distance himself from Luke, but still watch over him. And that was one that I kind of wanted to be true, because it would have. Part of the problem with the prequels and part of the problem with any sort of prequel is that generally speaking, you know what the end of the journey is,
yep.
and that would have,
It would have been an elegant twist.
yeah,
Yeah.
again, probably too clever for Lucas doing the writing at the time, but like the setup was there where you could
Yeah.
have done it and it would have felt right.
George Lucas does some really neat, or did some really neat things, as long as there was someone there to turn his batshit crazy into
Mm.
something that was watchable.
Yeah.
Right? Because you need batshit crazy. Like, the genesis of any kind of great idea
Oh,
is
absolutely.
absolutely crazy. But when it's just like, oh, okay, well, he was successful last time, so we'll let more of his crazy through. Well, didn't work out so great.
Yeah.
And part of the thing is that George Lucas is a great idea guy. He's not a very good director.
No, and I think that's true for a lot of idea people. Like
Yeah.
they you have to sacrifice some of the social stuff sometimes. I'm I don't have time to be good at talking to human beings and talking like human beings because I'm dedicating everything I've got to this other shit and I'm good at
Oh, like inventing Facebook.
it. So in his case, like writing screenplays and dialogue and directing actors, like you could have
Oh,
taken conceivably the prequel, like the basic sort of like, here's what's going to happen, here's you know even like story block it out, and then
yeah.
handed
Here's some
that
funky
to
characters.
like handed that to somebody that could do a great screenplay and a good director. And even with the boring stuff, like trade federation disputes and Senate
That's
discussions and stuff like that, like you could have turned it into something good in the right hands. Like
yeah.
there's the potential's there.
All of that stuff is excellent backdrop stuff. Like, the Trade Federation thing could just be, hey, there's a Trade Federation dispute. We don't need to know what it's about. We don't care. Tell
Hmm.
us who's involved and the broad outlines of what they're doing, and then show us the fighting, right?
Yeah.
I'm one of the analyses that I saw of the prequels was like sort of a comparison of how often you saw lightsabers in the original trilogy versus the prequel trilogy, right? And it was sort of a special thing that happened in the original, in 4, 5, and 6, and
Hmm.
in 1, 2, and 3, it was like on screen all the time. And that's not necessarily a problem. It's just a matter of degree, right? Like, you don't hand a lightsaber to a bunch of 6-year-olds. Like,
How
it's
else are
just,
they going to be a Jedi?
oh my god. Right? Like, I was willing to suspend disbelief. I was thinking about this earlier, actually, of somebody swinging around, a blade of light that is sort of consuming itself into a black hole contained in the handle of the lightsaber. When it was, okay, these Jedi are people who know sort of the location of everything that's in the universe around them at all times. They're probably not going to cut their own face off. When you hand it to a 4-year-old, the very first thing they're going to do is cut their friend's face off. Right? I don't know if you've interacted with any 4-year-olds, but
I've
they're
I've
monsters.
raised a lot of kids.
Yeah, like, the children are monsters. You have to teach them not to be monsters.
I don't know. Don't let the NRA hear you talk like that.
I mean, you can give them an M16, just don't give them a lightsaber.
Right. Okay.
An M16's got a safety switch on it.
All right. So while we're talking about lightsabers, I'm going to skip ahead a couple questions then, because we did have one that was lightsaber specific. If you could have a lightsaber from Star Wars, what color would it be, and what would you use it for in your daily life? Are you wearing pants?
I am wearing pants.
Okay.
That's an important distinction. I know you can't see all of that, but I have this in the back of my office. So it is Darth Maul's double-ended lightsaber, and I would use it as a nightlight. And I do.
So, what is the official canon for how lightsabers are powered now? Like, I know that's, kyber crystals and stuff like that, but like, what's the power source?
I don't know what it is now, because all the stuff that I knew came from the books,
Hmm.
which is now legacy and no longer canon. So I don't know if this might be the only thing in the Star Wars universe that has not been explained. Please don't give them any ideas. They will try and explain it, and it will suck.
Hmm. Because whether it's something inherent about the kyber crystal itself, or whether it's something else that's physically powering it,
The
like a fancy
Force.
fancy power cell or something like that. Like, to me, that's the valuable part of the lightsaber.
Uh-oh. Are you going to power a small city?
No, I mean, shit. Certainly, we should be able to use that to like fucking stop burning coal or some shit. I don't know.
Maybe.
Cleanish power.
Maybe. Who
Maybe.
knows? I mean, it might be that the control over the Force is the only thing that stops the entire galaxy from getting cancer. Like maybe maybe it's powered by cell phones.
Fucking 5G, man. All
Yeah.
right. If you could invent, this is going to be the same type of shit. If you could invent a gadget or technology from a sci-fi movie, I'll say, or a TV show, what would it be, and how would it change the world?
I think it would be the arc reactor from the Avengers. It just specifically because of that. Like clean power is something we need. We desperately need. And I mean, second on the list, 3, 2, 1, it's the thing from Star Trek.
Replicator.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Tea, Earl Grey, hot.
yeah, that would be my. So let's change the question then, because that's my answer.
Yeah. That's the smart answer.
So the question then is, assuming we can invent it and then power it with our existing technology, harnessing the light of the sun or whatever, would you how would you roll that out? Like, would it be smarter to just like provide the information to everybody, because that's going to get turned into bad shit too, right? Like giving somebody the power to replicate, I don't know, Bill Gates can give us all COVID with cell phone beams or something, or
I honestly think, like, here's the thing is that a large part, and then we're going to get into this is now like less entertaining and more serious.
mm-hmm,
In the real world, a large number of our problems are because of the divide between the haves and the have-nots,
mm-hmm.
right? If suddenly that divide disappeared, a whole bunch of people lose a bunch of power because they no longer have the ability to say, I control your food.
So then the important question is, how does this technology get ruled out in a way that doesn't widen that gap? That it is for everything. And
It
I
has to,
almost think that you have to be protective of it. Like, I would have to start a worldwide international company that basically just gives everything away and nobody knows how I'm doing it. I have the machine, nobody knows, and you get the world to the point where they're ready for it. You close that gap first,
I
make
don't
capitalism less of a thing, and
I
then
don't I don't think you can. I
I don't
think
know.
I think I think it has to be a rip the band-aid off painful situation. And I would literally start a replicator replicating replicators. Like that would be the first thing. Like it would be basically it's a rep rap replicator,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where here's a replica and it's just literally spitting out replicators. And rather than sending the things to people's houses, I would start a mass campaign, and for ironical sake, I would probably use Amazon to deliver them to everybody. And I would literally give everyone on Earth a replicator, and it would show up at their house. It would just show up. Here's your replicator. Tell it what you want, and it'll make it. And there would be an awful lot of really terrible things happen. You'd have to put some safeguards into the programming, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like no asking for, weapons or
Well, and that's what I guess,
yeah,
like, why I'm saying sort of be protective of the technology is because you can put those safeguards in, sort of. I mean, if you're just providing a black box,
yeah.
but if you're showing other people how to make replicators, or you're
No, and
building something that they can reverse engineer easy enough,
it
like,
would have to be if you want a replicator, then you ask the replicator to make a replicator, and it
yeah.
makes a replicator, and it completely and perfectly duplicates itself with the same safeguards. First, like in order, like do not harm any humans, do not through inaction allow any humans to come to harm, and obey
Mm-hmm.
humans' orders. Right? I mean, Isaac Asimov was here before us in the 50s, like almost 100 years ago. But yeah, that would be. I mean, that would be the thing. Because can you imagine? like going to a building site, and instead of ordering bricks, you just literally have a replicator dumping bricks out. It's like, keep making bricks until I tell you to stop.
Yeah, well, I don't know, and that's kind of why. Like, I wonder if the deployment strategy is like you as an organization. I mean, because money isn't a problem for you now, right? Like, I just start replicating the materials I need to replicate. Build hospitals, fill that, solve that sort of inequality in the world as quickly as you possibly can. Food, same thing. Like, I run an organization that has infinite money, so initially it's offered like it's operating within the fines of a capitalistic society. But you make your shit available for free to those in need. It doesn't seem fishy at all. Not that somebody
Yes.
starving is going to care where their food comes from too much, but you close the gap before.
I think it's a good thought. I'm not sure that it would work in the same way. I mean, like, there have been conspiracy theories for years and years and years about, the 100 mile per gallon carburetor that somebody
Yeah.
invented, and big oil is keeping it suppressed. And I'm sure that big oil is lobbying to keep regulations in place that make their stuff more desirable.
Hmm.
But I don't think that it goes as deep as a big conspiracy. However, if
You just
you,
have to look at insulin, man. Like.
yeah, and that's the thing though, is like our view of how that would work is very Western centric, like very North American centric,
Hmm.
and specifically American centric. And I think that probably the rest of the world would view it a little bit differently. But the people who are sort of in control of the systems are still in control of the systems. And as soon as they discover what you're up to, they're probably going to try and stop you. And that's the reason that I say, like, distribute it as wide as you can so that nobody can stop you. And I think both approaches have merit.
Hmm.
I'm not sure which one is right. I just think that they're two different ways to approach a problem that we're never going to have to solve.
Nope. All right. What fictional creature or monster would you choose as your loyal pet or sidekick?
I would choose an alligator, and his superpower would be biting people. That's a reference that you may not get. Oh my
No, I do
god.
not get it. I
All right.
probably should feel bad, but
No, not really. So it's one that's stuck in my head. It came along at around the same time as the candle with the warning on it to say, "Please do not stick this in any orifice." But which I think is aimed at people who are trying to do like ear candling, but it's just like a regular candle. It brings up other images though.
start
Um,
again.
we were talking about it was Kent and I. Remember Kent?
Garlo?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
So he and I were sharing a set of cubicles at one point on the overnight shift. We were manning the mentor line, and it was super quiet. So we're sitting there, and there was a coloring book sitting on the desk for some reason. I think we were just wasting time, sort of flipping through it. But it was like superhero based, right? And we're coming along, and we're doing this kind of thing where we're asking each other questions because it's 4 o'clock in the morning, and we're both exhausted. And we were talking about, like, if you were going to be a superhero, what kind of superhero would you be? And I forget what his answer was, but his sidekick would be an alligator, and its power would be biting people. And just, I mean, at the time, it struck me as absolutely hilarious. Now I think it's, mildly amusing. But I'm like, isn't that pretty much what alligators do? Anyway, so a fictional animal as a sidekick. Huh. I, I mean, I want a dragon of some kind. Like a big one. Tiamat, maybe.
See, funny enough, I was thinking about this one earlier talking to Tanya, and it was like, well, it's your pet, it's your sidekick, it's your buddy. Like, Godzilla would be great, but also incredibly boring. Like,
And
you're not getting the experience of having a sidekick or a buddy there. So I'm still going with dragon, but I would actually go with Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon, because, like, he's still got a lot of the benefits of dragon, right? But at the same time, like, hey, there's just a cool dude you can kind of hang out and, like, physically interact with in a plausible way.
I like the idea of a one of the original TSR dragons, and the reason being is because they're, like, yes, they're dragons, but they also have a human form,
Hmm.
so you can just like hang out and play video games and stuff.
All right. You know what? I'm going to skip this question because we've actually basically answered it on another show. Now that I think about it, if you could have a functional TARDIS from Doctor Who, when and where would you travel to first, and why?
This, here's the funny thing is I've answered this question before on a message board that I used to frequent, uh, called the Chronicles of George. And it was, if you could, basically it came down to like, if you could meet any or go to any time and see anything, what would you do? And my answer then and my answer now is the crucifixion of Christ,
Hmm.
because I'm pretty sure that that was a real thing that happened, and I'd like to know what the actual truth of the reality of that situation was. And it would be interesting to see it like sort of in the context of its time,
Hmm.
right? As opposed to, here's this blonde bearded guy from somewhere in Northern Europe who is, yeah.
Hmm.
Anyway,
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not going to try and ruffle any more feathers with it, but understanding what he was, Tanya and I have spoken about this before, where it's like, so what was Jesus really like? Was he any different than, like, say, a modern day cult leader, except that he was martyred at the right time that things took off?
maybe yes, maybe no.
I
Yeah,
don't
it would be
know.
interesting to find out.
Yeah,
Interesting.
certainly afterwards, Christianity as a religion went in a very different direction, and popularity skyrocketed. Like,
Yep. Yep.
I would like to. Oh man, there's so much I'd like to do. It'd be hard to pick a first one. There are so many sort of like historical human cultures, some of which we just don't understand at all, some of which we understand through the lens of like very limited information.
Or
Some,
distorted.
yeah, and some of them we have all kinds of information about, but it's really hard to understand the mindset. Like that whole sort of pre-Roman Empire, very late sort of Republic era Rome, for instance, right? Like first triumvirate kind of period of
Mm.
time would be a real interesting one just to understand like the headspace of the average Roman. I mean, I'd probably die of some sort of disease in the first week because, realistically, that's how time travel would work. It'd be
And you'd
like,
have to learn Latin and
yeah,
Greek.
yeah, and not the Latin and Greek we know today either, right? Like, but, getting into the mind of a Roman back then, like what motivated them. We think of Rome as a civilization, as a culture that is very much like almost like a proto version of our Western culture, but in so many ways what motivated them in a day-to-day life, like, something like wealth, for instance, was a tool for a different type of prestige. And, at least as we understand it with the little information that we have, I don't know, something like that, or going back and trying to look at ancient Greeks, right? Not through the lens and distortions of all the mythology, but like, what was ancient Greece actually like? What were the Spartans actually like? You know, I mean,
Mostly
the
naked.
probably, fucking horrible, like most people were back then, but at
Most
least
people
getting
are
to the
now.
bottom of those. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Getting to the bottom of those questions intrigues me, and maybe that's a little bit less nerdy in the sort of mainstream sense and more just like history nerd kind of answer. But
I would like to change my answer.
okay.
Or at least add something that I would like to do. I would really like to go and see uh, what this what the civilization was like in North America before Europeans showed up. Because everything that I learned in school, I know is pretty much wrong.
Hmm.
Part of the reason for that is that I literally grew up in a native community, And I mean, like, I wasn't particularly paying attention at the time, but I mean, I was 6, right? How am I
Hmm.
supposed to know? But looking back on it, it's like, oh yeah, things are way different than the, sort of images that we have, and we know, or at least we think we know, that there was like very much a sort of continent-wide functional governmental and legal system. I'm
Hmm.
curious to know what that was, how it worked.
Yeah,
That'd be nice to know.
absolutely. All right. What nerd hobby or interest have you always wanted to try but haven't had the chance to explore yet?
Oh, oh, hmm. I don't know. What is nerdy? I've always wanted to take up painting. I actually have the Bob Ross instructional course on the shelf. It's sitting there waiting
Oh.
until I can, uh, in theory, that's going to happen when I retire, assuming that ever happens. I'm not sure that that's really nerdy, but it's something I've always wanted to do.
I'm intrigued by, and I think I've talked about this before a little bit, but just the whole way the maker space has evolved and sort of merged and just overlaps with each other now. Um, where like CNC stuff is just not a manufacturing process type thing now. Like it is a hobbyist sort of level process that can be used to do stuff. And I haven't done a ton of CNC, like a little bit of 3D printing stuff. I've been dabbling with it on the design side, trying to figure out Fusion 360 a little bit. And part of it is I think I told you I've been watching a lot of videos and doing a lot of prep, but I want to get into doing resin dice.
Yep.
Now, not, printing resin dice, but printing dice masters that I can then use to do molding so that I can actually do proper poured resin dice. And like I could have just, used some dice blank kind of STL files and start there or whatever. But actually getting into designing like from the ground up these what are simple sort of shapes really, but
Uh-huh.
the
They're
math
complicated.
behind them are not.
The shapes are very complicated. The 20-sided die
Yeah.
is actually the very first thing because I this is what I do for a living, kind of, is
Hmm.
that
Yeah,
modeling
yeah,
stuff. And the very first thing that I did when I started sort of learning it was made a 20-sided die, and it took me a week.
yeah,
Now I can do it in about 18 minutes, but first time
yeah.
took me a week.
Well, even just like incident angles and trying to figure out the math shit so that you can
Yep.
create planes that you can then repeat and all of that jazz. But I wanted to do it so that I had like complete control over everything, right? Like just the
Mhm.
filleting on the edges, the intersections of my planes before I turned it into a solid shape or whatever. Anyway, I think I want to get into that more. My project that I mentioned before, where I want to build a robot that paints, was sort of my like. I don't just want to learn, how do I design something and export it in a format that like a printer or a CNC router can use. Like I want to get behind the scenes and learn how to do my custom shit and actually control like work with a microcontroller and control servos and stepper motors and stuff like that. So I wanted to build that paint bot as my sort of starter course into doing some CNC stuff. But that
uh,
shit takes time, man, and it starts feeling a lot like work when you get into it.
yeah, I was gonna
But I'll
say
get there one day.
your starter project sounds an awful lot to me like something that I did at work that we spent $1.5 million on and then gave up
Yeah.
on. Because
Yeah.
we discovered that we could buy it for about 75 grand.
Okay, so this is semi-related then, and I think you've probably got better answers than I do. Share a nerdy DIY project or craft that you've completed that you're particularly proud of.
DIY projects. All right, so building computers doesn't count because I've done that like 100 times.
Yeah,
I mean, the very first 3D printer that I got came. I mean, it came from China.
yeah. Hmm.
And it was like the construction quality was reasonable, but the instruction manual had 7 parts, of which they gave me 5. So I was pretty proud of actually printing anything with that, although it never really worked quite right. It was like $350 that I more or less just went, I've been working on it for 4 years. It still doesn't work. I'm going to give it away. The kid I gave it to, I think, has got it working and doing all the things it's supposed to do because he's just that good. But I don't know. I'm in a similar boat to you in the way that I approach these kinds of things, where I have these great ideas, and then as soon as it becomes, hey, I have to do some work to make this happen, I
Mm-hmm.
just don't. Just don't. I mean, I've started writing the Great Canadian Novel like 13 or
72
14 times.
times. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I get 3 or 4 chapters in, and then I quit. I started making Cindy a paddle for the canoe. I got most of the way through that and quit. So
Yeah.
complete? Not many,
Yeah.
if any.
Now, there's a lot of things that I do that, like, I rely on my day to day nerd kind of work related knowledge. And that's cheating to do that, right? Like, oh, I just took what I do for work and did that to solve a different problem.
Mm-hmm.
We opened a restaurant, for instance, years and years ago, and we're getting ready to open, and we're looking at things for like point of sale systems, right? Like, what could we do that's gonna, work for us? And like, oh, just this shit's so expensive, or it's just so tedious, and it's not a good fit for what we want to do. And I'm like, fuck it, I'll make my own. And spent like 3 days cobbling together a point at like a web-based point of sale system that this is at a time where like not any store that you walked into would just see people walking around with iPads, and everybody was amazed. Now it was the jankiest shit you would have ever seen.
I remember being surprised by the fact that like it was all being done on an iPad. Like
Yeah.
this is future time.
Yeah, like I mean, I had lots of people say, "Oh man, you got to sell that to me," and I'm like, "No, there's no way this could possibly work for anybody except me." And uh, the amount of work it would take to turn it into like a viable product at that time would have been a little more than I could probably handle in terms of only having 24 hours in the day while working a development job and running a restaurant and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of my projects like that are like solving problems with shit I know. And sometimes it's just weird shit. Like I did something similar. My in laws had a big wedding anniversary sort of party a few years back. And I was tasked with DJing, playing music for the blue hairs. And rather than me just playing a whole bunch of music and trying to figure out what everybody wanted, I thought, okay, I'll build this thing. I'll put tablets around, and it's basically just a voting system that automatically queued up music and prioritized it for me so that I could just let them choose what they wanted. I just had a library of a bajillion songs or whatever. Again, the kind of thing that you write it in a weekend. And so I don't know; those don't really count. I want to say, thinking about 3D printing, one of the more satisfying and productive ones that's sort of small scale DIY. One of the first sort of scratch built things that I did was when we put our dog in the back of the car to like take her places, go to the dog park or whatever. We have a little mini seatbelt thing that we just clip it onto her harness or her collar or whatever, and then it just clips into the seatbelt thing in the car. But it's the style of buckles where like you just push in on the thing right beside
Mm-hmm.
where it clips in, and like she gets walking around the back seat.
Lets
She's
herself out.
stepping on it all the time, right? And like she likes to kind of put her head out the window and stuff. So I designed it's basically like a box. Like it's probably the most simple thing you could design and 3D print, just with the measurements of the buckle and stuff. That just it's a you slide the seatbelt strap thing through it, clip it in, slide this back down, and like if you either have to pull it back up to
Mm-hmm.
get under it, or you just got to jam something like a key in it to push the button, but it prevents her toes or claws or anything from getting in to release it. So
Yeah, so I have mentioned that my job is actually well, it's not so much anymore, but my job previously was to design things to
Hmm.
solve similar problems. And I will tell you this, it is very hard to design something simple.
Hmm.
Um, Most people will look at things that someone else has made and go, "Oh, I could have thought of that." And you're right, you can, but I guarantee you that you're going to start with something complicated, and then you're going to go, "It doesn't work because of this," and it becomes more and more and more complicated as you add more features onto it in order to solve problems that are a result of you solving previous problems, until eventually you go, "I don't need any of that," and you design a box with a hole in it.
Hmm.
So jumping right to the box with a hole in it, that's something to be proud of.
I suppose. I'm just proud that it worked. I was a little bit snug the first time I did it, so I ran a second print and it was fine.
Yeah.
It's been, and I mean, I've only got a resin printer, so the fact that I even got it to print, because it was one of the first things I actually did a print on itself, was a bit of an achievement.
Yep. Hey, if it's stupid and it works, it's not stupid.
Nope, nope. All right. Share your nerdiest and most prized possession that holds sentimental value to you.
Do I have any nerdy possessions? Hmm. I can share something that I 3D printed. Actually, if I can, I'm going to have to go steal it from my wife. I'll be right back. Da-da-da. Wireless headsets are great. Question is, where is she hidden it? I think I might have actually shown it to you before, and now I don't know where it is.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I know what you're talking about.
Has she hidden it? It's very weird. Did I steal it? That's a question. Because
It
it was right over here. Now
was
we're
like a
there
piece
it
of
is.
jewelry, wasn't it? That was very like steampunky, all gears and cogs and stuff.
Nope.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking about something else then.
You might be. So here it is. It is a dice tower
Hmm.
that I designed and 3D printed, and you can see dice going down a set of spiral stairs the whole way down. And I have some dice right here because I am never without dice. So, and how do I make this work? Let's see. Here's the exit, there's the entrance, and out it comes. And it's just there's like the windows all around. You can actually see
Hmm.
the die falling through it. This took more time than I would like to admit to actually get working. This
Hmm.
was the first thing that I printed on the 3D printer you can actually see behind me here,
Hmm.
which is the Prusa Mini. I would highly recommend that if you're going to buy a 3D printer, buy one from a reputable person and not the one from China. It might work, it might not. If you like tinkering with things, great. This one just works, which I'm old enough now to appreciate. So that's my nerdy possession.
Okay.
It's not really my possession.
I think my sort of most like prized possessions are the stuff from my youth. I've been trying to reacquire the stuff that I've been missing, but the thing I managed to keep was my first two computers.
Wow.
I think you've seen them on my shelf before at my office, but Timex Sinclair 1000, which was just
Ooh.
a little like Sinclair ZX81 kind of mostly clone with some subtle differences brought over to the US and Canada. And then the little TRS 80 MC10, which was another kind of like little chiclet style sort of setup. And the reason why they're kind of prized is like when most people got into computing, like they were learning on, I don't know, apples or
Commodore
like,
64.
yeah, or, pets or like old school popular things. And like almost nobody had the Timex,
No.
or
Well,
almost
they only made
nobody.
7 of them.
Yeah. They were a very much like for the masses kind of thing. Like at the time, I think they sold them for like 99 bucks at Radio Shack, which is a lot of money back in the day. We're talking 83,
Back
maybe
when
84.
minimum wage was about 4.50.
Yeah. but relative to like what some of the other 8-bit micros were selling for at the time, like that's pretty crazy. And there wasn't a lot for it, so most of the stuff that you did on it involved you writing your own code. Like, at 5 years old, I'm keying in BASIC. And the fact that I still have it and I can look at it and it's a reminder of like my first real step into the kind of nerd that I am today. I tried very, very hard to avoid being the computer guy that writes code all day, and I ended up being there anyway. I'd get into the music thing for a while. I got into uh, working in call centers and like corporate level sort of training and development, education shit, and ended up finding my way back here anyway. And if I'd have just done a straight line, you know,
Yeah.
and that kind of
Yep.
serves as a reminder to me of that.
Do they still power up?
It's been a while. I don't know that I'd even want to try now. I'd probably want to go in and recap them before I did anything.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they'd be a little
Now,
bit deteriorated.
yeah, they would have been like before the sort of the capacitor plague issues, so they might actually be okay.
Hmm?
But I'd want to probably
You'd want
just
to
to be
look.
safe. Certainly
Yeah.
that some of my later stuff, like my Amiga, for instance, like I wouldn't even plug it in now. I'd definitely want to recap that just on principle.
I had an Amiga up until we moved up here. I had to give it away because it was just, too
Yeah.
much stuff to carry around.
Yeah, I got an Amiga 1000 without the boot ROM, so you're actually having to pull a
Workbench.
workbench
Chunk.
from a
Yep.
floppy and then pull it out. But
Yeah.
I got that later in life. I didn't actually have an Amiga at the time that they were relevant. It's something that I
Yeah.
acquired because I'm a dork.
Amiga had some of the greatest stuff though. Like
Oh, dude, they were. I don't
El-
want to say they were ahead of their time, but the stuff that they could do, it took more mainstream PC computers till like Pentium 133 era
yep.
to be able to brute force the same type of stuff. Like, you know, were they a great business machine? Probably not, but almost everything else, like even just
Oh,
having the architecture that they had, where just everything was sort of handed
they were
off to other sort of ASICs.
yeah,
That,
like they
yeah,
were they were multiple like multi-processing at a time when everybody was they didn't
yeah,
even know what that was. There was the Fat Agnes chip and the Fat Angus chip and Eldritch Cats. Did you ever play that? And Speedball. Speedball was awesome.
hmm
Um,
uh, the whole reason I got it, and I never got to do it. Uh, I got the thing so that I could play the Amiga version of Fairy Tale.
oh yeah, that is a big game. I had books and books and books of maps that I had hand drawn to try and figure out where I was. And
hmm
I'd always get to the third brother and get lost in the maze and die of starvation.
Yeah, I played. I never got through the whole game. I played it on other machines,
Yeah.
and the Amiga was, I believe, at the time the superior version of the game, and
Yes.
that's one of the whole reasons that I wanted to get it. I mean, I could just emulate that shit now, but there's something to be said for the feel and the smell of the original hardware. Like, I'm not snobby about it. Like a lot of the retro video games and stuff I play it emulated. I want the hardware to look at and
Hmm.
touch, but I don't necessarily want to go through the pain of having to like composite mod them if like the only output's RF or something like that, right?
Oh man, yeah. That was that was actually the biggest trouble because my Amiga did actually work when I gave it away. Somebody left it out in the rain, so it's destroyed now.
Mm,
But the problem was like you needed to actually get an Amiga monitor. You couldn't plug it into anything else, or at
yeah.
least nothing modern.
No, I had one of the I can't even remember the model of it, the Commodore slash Amiga monitor that everybody coveted. Like back in the day when retro gaming first started making its sort of resurgence and everybody realized that, oh wow, these things look like crap on LCDs and worse, play like crap because of all of the extra input latency and stuff as a result. It was like the monitor to try and play retro stuff on. And I definitely would need to recap that before I fire it out. It's been sitting in my storage room for probably 16 years now.
Yeah, that's one of those things that like I had up until we moved up here. Actually, I had a 286 luggable. Remember
Ooh,
those? Yeah,
like one of the old Zenith lunchbox ones, or was it actually an
I
IBM?
I think it
I
was
forget
I
what the
think it
name was.
was yeah, I think it was an IBM. But I mean, like it had like an LCD in glorious orange and not quite orange.
Yeah.
It wasn't black. Um, it, and it would just I don't know. It's one of those things that I look at and I go like, this is kind of a neat piece of history, but nobody but me is interested in it, and it weighs 150 pounds, and I'm moving, so toss.
Yeah.
And
And
I don't
I
I
did a
don't miss
big
it.
purge of a bunch of stuff, but there are some things where I think I told you that I wanted to kind of start doing like art would be the wrong word, but like a nice way to present some of the old shit that just has all the member berries behind it, right? Like my old GeForce 3 video card, for instance. Like could I do do a little shadow box type thing where I could LED light it, put on a wall, and maybe I'm not keeping like an entire computer from back in the day, or I'm not building something that's functional, but I can look at it and be like, ah,
I
good
remember.
times.
Yep.
My old Athlon XP 1800 plus or whatever it was, and
Oh man, everybody had one of those.
yeah, they were great and affordable for the time. But it's not that that chip was so amazing for me, but it was that everything that happened when I had that chip, and I can look back and just and that's why I want my old hardware back. Like I don't have any old Commodore computers anymore. Those are things that sort of me growing up. I had stuff stored in my dad's garage for years, and then they did a big purge and never bothered to mention, oh hey,
Yeah.
we're throwing some of the shit that you've got stored here out. And it's like,
I hate that. That's one of the reasons like I'm really looking forward to, because we're going through, because we're moving in a couple of months. Next month. It's 27 days. I actually have a timer on my phone.
yeah.
And one of the things that I'm looking for, because we have stuff that we just kind of farmed out to a bunch of friends where, like this person has that person has that. And as trustworthy as my friends are, I'm really looking forward to having all of my stuff in my possession again.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be That'll be nice, because I had a similar situation with where I bought a 1989 Supra and I had it stored at my in-laws' place, and I took some stuff off. One of the things about the 89 Supra, the Mark III, is that there's like a rubber. It's like an air dam almost. It goes
Mm-hmm.
underneath the front grille, and almost you can't get it anymore. They don't
Yeah.
exist, and they get sort of distorted over time.
Mm-hmm.
So people just take them off, and you can replace them with other things, and it looks good.
Now,
Um,
89 is that the first year they went front wheel drive?
no, Supra has
Okay.
never been front wheel drive. 89 was the Mark III. The Mark III was the first year that was it the Mark II
Because
that
I
did the
raced an 85. Well, it was actually the Celica, but it was
Celica.
identical to the Supra
R-
in every way. It was before they just used the name Supra.
The Celica Supra was a straight six instead of the four. That was the
Uh,
that was the difference between the Celica and the Supra.
yeah, well, the one that I had in 85 had the 2200 RE four cylinder in it.
Right. Yeah,
It
and
was
that was the
multi-port fuel
difference.
injection. And
Is the Supra was basically like the straight six instead.
okay.
And when the Celica went front wheel, the model after the Celica went front wheel drive, or the time that the model before,
Mm-hmm.
um, the Supra and the Celica actually parted ways, because the Mark One there was a Celica and a Celica Supra. The Mark Two there was a Celica and a Celica Supra. The Mark Three was the first time that they split off, and there was a Celica and there was a Supra, and the Supra was its own car.
Okay.
In any case, so there's this sort of rubber thing that goes underneath the front grille. And just because of the way it was made and the materials it was made out of, it would get in the sun, it would get all distorted, and people would take them off and throw them away. Mine was perfect, but my front grille wasn't. It actually had some road rash from various adventures the car had been through before I got it. So I took it all apart, right? And I brought the front grille home, because we were living in an apartment at the time, and I left all of the sort of supporting hardware under the car, with that rubber piece. And my
Mm-hmm.
father-in-law went through that and said, "You don't need any of this stuff, right?" And I said, yeah, it's all important stuff. And he's like, oh, well, that's too bad. I took it to the dump last week. I'm like, oh man, like, I mean, I know it's stored on your property and you don't like clutter, but it was under the car. Like, oh my God. Anyway, I'm having trouble letting this go. I mean, this was fucking 15 years ago now. uh, so I don't
Yeah,
like having my stuff at other people's houses because my experience is that other people don't treat my stuff with the same respect that I do. It's just the way it
I get
is.
it. I get
You
it,
know,
man.
that's human nature.
All right. Where did we leave off here? Sentimental value. Share your nerdiest or most impressive achievement in a video game that you worked hard to accomplish.
Um, I, for a period of 5 years, managed to stay at the top end of rating stuff or rating level in EverQuest on one of the TLPs. When EverQuest first came out in 1999, I was like, oh, I so badly want to do all of this stuff, and I want to go everywhere, and I want to see everything. You know, oh, what's these raids? I want to go on those, and I just did not have the time to devote to it. So I never got to see any of it. And then the TLPs came out, and I, tried it out, and I joined a raiding guild, which is oddly enough is literally breaking up next week. Like the guild is not dissolving, but they've stopped raiding just because they don't have the attendance to do it.
Mhm.
It's tough to keep that many people together because raids in EverQuest were in original EverQuest they were open world only and they were not capped, and you didn't actually form a raid. You literally just everybody formed a group and you
Yeah.
all went and did the thing. Um, and I mean, I got to see all of the original stuff. I got to raid Sky. I got to raid Nagy and Vox, which was really like those three things were the three things that I wanted to do, and we finished them in I don't know, like 9 days, right? Something that took like because when the game first came out, I spent a year and got to level 35. And this was like level 50, gear up through some smaller stuff and, trading stuff around with people and then go and do like the three main raids. And it was 9 days. But I kept up with it. Like we did, they just went to expansion 10 or 11 or 12 or something. And I more or less dropped out of it because it was too much of a time commitment, right? Because you got 3 raiding days a week, plus you've got to, grind out your alternate abilities. You've got to farm gear. You've got to do progression. You've got to, like money is a big thing and you got to figure that out. So, I mean, it was becoming a job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I mean, I was pretty proud of the fact that I managed to stick with it that long. And I was, actually a reasonably competent member of the contributing class of the guild. So that was cool.
So mine is probably similar. I got into raiding a little bit when I was playing World of Warcraft, ran a raiding guild for a while. Just not my thing. So I tended to get involved in the little sort of side communities and really niche shit. And I really got into the Twink PvP community. Now, for those that don't know, I mean, when we're talking Twink, we're not talking what most people think of when they hear the word characters that aren't leveled up to level cap. Uh, you know, souped up like you might soup up a car, right? Like just try and do the weird shit with them. And sometimes it was a process to even like get them leveled appropriately without over leveling them because you can turn experience off before the Wrath expansion. Anyway, there was one weapon in Vanilla and Burning Crusade, sort of a notorious, infamous kind of weapon that was just impossible to get.
Thunder Fury.
No, this is like it's a weapon that like if you didn't twink and you found it, like you might disenchant it. Like just thinking, oh, whatever. It's sort of a weird weapon. Um, so I was building a level 39 enhancement shaman. And back then, weapon speed mattered for certain things. You'd have certain things like Wind Fury on a shaman, that the damage would be calculated based on your weapon damage,
Hmm.
not based on like some sort of averaged out or adjusted kind of damage per second. It was based on, so having a weapon with a slow swing made a huge difference. And there was very few weapons that had a 3 second swing with really good max damage, but the one was named Pendulum of Doom. Had no extra like bonus stats on it, really, but was just a beast. And it had a drop rate of like 0.001% from just a handful of mobs in a dungeon, Uldaman. I ran. Now, fortunately, it was a bind on a equip, not a bind on pickup weapon, so you could just farm it on your main if you wanted. I ran over 500 runs through that dungeon, and I got one. And so proud of it that I'm like, oh, I'm going to build out like another weird character, like not a shaman. I think I was actually going to do like ret paladins were just horrible in that bracket for Twinks, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to build one that's going to be amazing, just because nobody would bother to waste this weapon on it. I ended up putting 800 plus runs in trying to get a second one and never got it. My buddy picked one up in an auction house, I think, for like 30 gold. It was the only time it appeared on the server, like in the months and months and months and months that I was farming. He found it in the auction house for like nothing, because it was one of those things like, unless you knew what it was, you'd look at it and say, oh, it's garbage, it's trash. It's like a level 35 piece of junk. I've out leveled it by the time I'm in the dungeon that drops it. What do I care? But 500 plus runs to get it the first time to build this glass cannon enhancement shaman that basically, like, if Wind Fury procced, I one shot whoever I was fighting, whether they were a twink or not. Like, like I competed in like some twink PvP tournaments with it against like classes that like should kill you, right? Because like it
Hmm.
was not an optimal thing. It's one of those things where like if RNG kicks in and Wind Fury procs, you're dead. There's no mitigating the amount of damage that I would do.
Yeah, that's neat. That brings back an idea there, or a memory. There was a thing, because I played it in EverQuest. I played a bard, and one of the things that bards get is a sort of set of, like, you can get items that you click on and they'll make an illusion or whatever. And there's one that I didn't get, which is the gnome illusion mask, because it's only available until a certain mob is killed, and that mob was killed like 4 hours into the expansion launch. But the halfling mask was dropped from one single mob in one single dungeon in the bottom of Shardock from the Foreman something Foreman. I forget what it was actually called. But I spent, because we like, it was also a good leveling dungeon, so we spent the whole expansion leveling in that dungeon, doing extra experience in that dungeon. And then after we had out leveled the dungeon, I went back and I parked my character there. And at odd moments, like I get a break from work, I would log on, I would kill the mob, I would camp out. I calculated, I spent 120 hours farming that mask. I did finally get one. And then after I got one, every time that somebody went into that dungeon, it dropped again. Like, it's not even, and this is the stupid thing, it's not even that rare. Like, it's rare. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like, I think it's like a 1% drop or something from a rare mob that doesn't always spawn. So chances are, like, you're gonna spend, I don't know, like 40 hours or something farming the thing. And it was just like, it was forever. Oh my god. Like, literally 120 hours of, like, it's not even a mob I'm getting experience for anymore. It's literally like I can train the entire dungeon down to the bottom, and when they get there, I go boomf, and they all die.
Mm-hmm.
And you just, like, like, he pops, boom, he's dead. Didn't drop it. He pops, boom, he's dead. Didn't drop it.
Yeah, that was the annoying thing about the farming Uldaman for Pendulum of Doom too, is these little grogs just like 3/4 of the way into what was a pretty damn big dungeon, and there's only like I think 8 or 12 of them out of like hundreds of trash mobs in this thing. There's like 8 of them or something that drop this thing at such a low, incredibly low drop rate.
Yep.
Oof.
Well, it's
I should
still
have just,
better than
won the real lottery or something because I probably
yeah.
had better chance at it.
I mean, it's better than farming MCPs to try and be a melee cat. What were they? The druid something? The melee druid? That if you farm MCPs and you're able to click them continually, you can almost get to the bottom of the DPS meters as a druid. Yeah. I played a druid the short period of time that we did WoW TLP. We switched from EQ to WoW for a little bit, and it was awful.
Yeah. No, you just
I
did Vanilla Classic. You didn't do Burning Crusade, eh?
no
Yeah. See,
no
that's
we
where you guys should have got in. It was.
yeah. I just we were on a PvP server, and PvP is just not my thing.
Yeah.
And like there was literally a line of my corpses from wherever I started to wherever I was trying to get to. Just always, just a line of my corpses.
Get good, scrub.
Yeah. It's just not my thing. It's
No.
hard. It's hard to get good when it's like 4 rogues who jump out of stealth and insta gib you.
Yeah.
Like I was literally running through zones, casting friggin' heal over time on myself to try and survive the run.
That's one of the reasons that my buddy and I like getting into the twink stuff. I mean, we enjoyed it,
Mm.
but also that was the counter to those guys where it's like, oh, there's level capped rogues just camping low level zones. Nothing clears them out faster than when a character 10 levels lower than them comes in and just wrecks them.
Yeah.
Embarrass them a few times and they just disappear.
Yeah, that was one of those things where it's like, like that, like, why do you do it? Why are you camping like a level 10 zone with your level 60 character? So you call your high, you get on your mains and come and fight us. It's like, no, because when they show up, you run,
Yeah.
right? You're here
Just
because you
dicks
have a sick,
justifying being dicks.
yeah, you're sick in the head.
Yeah.
Anyway. Whatever. If you enjoy it, go ahead and enjoy it. I'm sure because there was one guild that was camping my because I tried to play on a PvP server on like regular WoW for a little bit, and like I logged into the world and I got to level 10 or whatever and stepped outside of the safe zone and got like insta killed. And there's literally just like a whole guild just circling on flying mounts above, just dropping out of the sky and killing people.
Yeah.
I'm like, you've been camping me for a week here. Like I'd log in, I'd get insta-gibbed, I'd log out, I'd come back tomorrow. I'd come back tomorrow, I get insta-gibbed, I'd log out, I'd come back tomorrow. As far as I know, they're still there. I'm not playing anymore. Like, enjoy your empty server, I
Yeah.
guess. Whatever.
Uh, all right. Share a nerdy fact or trivia that always blows your mind and surprises others when you share it.
Oh, I got nothing. Nerdy trivia.
So there's one thing that I mean, it doesn't blow my mind because I know about it, but like whenever I have the conversation with other people, like sometimes it's just even hard to communicate. And that is just how small amount of time humans have been here.
Mm.
And even smaller an amount of time that like recorded history and humans as we think of them as being, being old, like we were talking about Romans earlier. And like thinking about that relative to the entirety of human history, which is mostly unrecorded, if you want to just to throw a number out and say anatomically modern humans have been here 300,000 years and maybe the genus of Homo for a couple of million, currently up for debate. Even that is such a blip in the time scale of multicellular life. Like even relative to when the dinosaurs died out,
Mm.
a couple million years represents such a small percentage. But then you think of it in terms of geologic time and like cosmic time, and it's just like all of a sudden, the events of 380, BCE don't feel like they're all that long ago, even though it feels like ancient history, right?
Yeah, it's weird to think about time in that way. Like, like Betty White was older than sliced bread. Like things like that are important. So here's something that just actually occurred to me. If we look at science fiction as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
and when we look at sort of science, a lot of especially written science fiction from like the 50s and 60s, the sort of pulp era, a lot of it dealt with sort of utopian societies,
Mm-hmm.
right? And how some of them are utopian, some of them are not. But here's an interesting thing: is that very few depictions of utopian societies are not communist,
Mm-hmm.
which is an interesting thought to me. I mean, I don't think it particularly works because human nature is what it is. But at the same time, it's like, hey, like whenever we imagine, hey, what's the ideal life like? And it's, you don't have to grind for a roof over your head and food to eat.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. I don't know. We're living in the future and I don't have a flying car. So,
Well, that's the other interesting thing about, you think of sort of the sci-fi from that era. Their depiction of the future, like, often wasn't 30,000 years in the future. It was the year 2000,
yep.
you know,
When no one will have to work because machines will do it all for us.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's what it is for me. Just understanding, like, and sometimes I catch myself and I'm surprised by, thinking about history. I listen to a lot of history podcasts and stuff, like, big fan of Dan Carlin. I go back and listen to his old stuff and I think about when he's talking about things like the Assyrian Empire, for instance, right? Like, one of the very, very early empires, and talks about it as being civilization sort of 1.0. And, it was around basically longer than the time between the fall of Nineveh and, like, now. And you think of just how ancient that is, and then you realize that's just a blip on,
Yeah.
pick a random scale. Let's not even look at cosmic time or geographic time. Like, Homo sapiens in some sort of recognizable form, anatomically modern Homo sapiens. Like, we think of history as this thing that goes back to the beginning, but, like, recorded history just goes back to the last few years, relatively speaking. We
It's
have
sort of
nothing from, you know
it's yeah. Like what we think, it's funny how people look at what their perspective is on life and don't realize just exactly how small a slice of everything that is.
yeah, like,
Like it's tiny.
let's even think of, like, archaeological history, right? Like, if we know we've been around for 300,000 years and we're digging stuff up that we think we might be dating to as far back as, like, I don't know, let's say even 30,000 years ago. That's from the last 10% of human experience, from our overall history. So
Yep.
if I had a TARDIS, getting back to that other question, maybe I'd go back and try and figure out what was going on before then. Was it? Yeah, I'm sure it was a lot of isolated sort of hunter gatherer societies, but I'm sure there's a lot of sort of buried, hidden, like, early proto agricultural societies and stuff that we just haven't found any evidence of yet.
There's a really interesting thing that when you talk about sort of ancient history of humans too, is that we think of like, especially because we get the impression from the media, like movies and stories and things, that people didn't move around much,
Hmm.
and early humans traveled
Oh yeah,
a
absolutely.
ton. So yeah,
Literally
yeah,
around the world.
yeah,
Like, you
yeah.
just have to look at, and I know that, like, our arrival here in North America, and we're actually kind of pushing that back further and further and further as we're finding sort of more evidence. But, like, even when you look back at, the latest ice age, when it was feasible for us to cross the Bering land bridge, like, in that time, humans would have made their way from Africa all the way through what we would look at is sort of East Asia, either around the coastline or straight up through the steppes, up into like what is Siberia and north, like
Hmm.
literally traversing from south to north, basically the diameter of our planet to just cross and
Yep.
go about the same distance south down into South America, where we're seeing like, oh shit, like there were people in Mesoamerica a long time before we thought maybe there were.
Yeah. Yep. Well, there's some
And
evidence too that shows the origin of the human species is actually in Australia.
yeah, I'm actually going to get into the next question because it actually relates to this for me.
Okay.
Next question. It's going to be the last question before we get into some tabletop stuff. Share your favorite nerdy or geeky YouTube channel or podcast that you can't get enough of and recommend it to everyone. Now, I have a
Oh, okay.
million answers to this question, but
I
one
have
guy
a.
I'm going to recommend just because we've been talking about it and I've just stumbled across this guy. It's not a big channel. His name is Stefan Milo, and he does a whole bunch of stuff on what we were just talking about, like sort of early humanity and like not necessarily Homo sapiens, but the development,
Lucy.
evolution, and spread of like Australopithecines right up through Homo erectus and some of our sort of more modern brethren, Neanderthals, Denisovans, like all of that sort of hominid kind of stuff. He covers, and it's just absolutely fascinating. Uh, Both the material and kind of how he covers it. So Stefan Milo, Stefan with an F, I believe. Check him out. The other guy, who is my favorite YouTuber, period, like full stop, doesn't put out enough material, but everything he puts out is bangers. And he's a guy that has a absolutely criminally low subscriber count, but everybody in the world has seen his memes, and that's H Bomber Guy. Now, if you don't know who that is, shame on you. But also, you know who it is if you've ever seen uh, the Ben Shapiro Aquaman meme.
I don't think I have.
Oh, just Ben Shapiro is, I
Yes, I
assume.
do.
Yeah. So where
Yeah.
he's talking about climate change, and if the water rises, you don't think people are just going to sell their houses? And then the meme is the guy busting through a wall, and he's like, "Sell them to whom, Ben? Aquaman?" Anyway, that's H Bomber Guy. He's done everything from sort of like counter commentary stuff on like rebutting climate denial and stuff, but he also does like random video game coverage and stuff on like TV shows and shit. um, One of the best YouTube videos ever made, he made kind of in the pandemic, talking about the early sort of anti-vax movement and how it started, its roots with literally one doc. um, and it is both extremely educational and extremely entertaining. So H Bomber Guy, if you don't watch him, check him out.
I haven't. I will. For me, there's a group of guys that I recommended to you, and I think you mentioned them actually in last episode, and it's Red Letter Media. They do this
Mm-hmm.
thing called Best of the Worst.
We just watched the latest episode actually earlier today.
So did I. Yeah, they do. It's so funny because every time that I'm watching it, like even if I have my headphones on, my wife will be in the other room and go, "You're watching those guys again, aren't you?" Because you can hear, honest to God, like if anyone on Earth right now is watching and Rich Evans is laughing, we can all hear him.
Here's how I know I have the right wife. I went years and years and years not showing her that stuff, thinking, well, this isn't going to be something that she likes. Like, there's some aspects of it, like I have to wait till I get the meta, because like I don't usually like smart people acting dumb. So like I generally skipped over like the first few minutes of like a half in the bag episode, because I don't
Yep.
care about it. Like, start talking about the movies or whatever. But she finally asked, what are you watching? And I got her through a couple of episodes of Best of the Worst, and she's a way bigger fan now than I am. Like, I
Yeah.
think secretly she's probably a little bit in love with Mike.
He's an interesting guy.
He is an interesting dude. They're all interesting guys.
Yeah.
I would definitely give them a thumbs up.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I actually stumbled onto them on the Star Wars Holiday Special episode, and it was especially amusing watching them talk for about an hour and 15 minutes about everything except the Star Wars Holiday
Mhm.
Special.
Now, I'm going to say something that you probably don't agree with.
Oh, shoot!
If you watch Red Letter Media, don't make the Plinkett stuff your introduction to them. Watch
No,
Best of the
I
Worst
do
stuff.
agree. I do agree.
Yeah.
I do agree because having a sort of a grounding of what they do and what they talk about and how they talk about it makes the Plinkett stuff much more entertaining.
Yeah, like when I first tried to get into them, it was with the Plinkett stuff, like
Oh yeah.
actually the Star Wars Phantom Menace stuff way back in the day.
Nope.
It was like, oh, like I you know what? Like if I can get past the smart guys acting dumb shit, I mean the stuff that they're saying here is actually pretty good.
Yep.
But I
Yep.
just couldn't get past that. But once I got into the Best of the Worst stuff, we were pretty hooked.
Yeah, there's some things that they will say about because of course like I'm a very technical minded person, right? Like so
Mhm.
there's sometimes like they will do analysis of things and go like I don't understand how this works and I'm like I completely understand how it works and I understand why it's there and I completely disagree with what you're saying about it. But everything else they do is good,
Yeah.
so they get a
Also,
pass.
don't watch Space Cop until you've watched the
Whatever.
other stuff because you got to realize that Space Cop's a joke.
It's an inside joke, yeah.
It's
Have you
all a
s- ha-
joke.
have you seen Space Cop? I've only seen bits and pieces.
Yep.
Yeah. You know what I think would be a really entertaining thing to do is for you and I and our wives to get together and watch Space Cop and do like a Mystery Science Theater 3000 while watching it. I don't even know that I'd want to record it. I just would really like to do that.
Yeah. Well, you're coming down. Could probably jump into the boardroom at my office and do some snacks or something. I don't know how much time you got while you're down.
We need to figure out a time because we're coming down. We're actually heading out tomorrow. And I think Tuesday's a wipe, and I have my stepmother's 80th birthday party on Saturday. We're headed home on Sunday, so I don't know what
Thursday's a wipe for
fits.
me because I got a staff event then. I run D&D Tuesday night.
So we're looking at like Wednesday or Friday then, probably.
Yeah. Do you have a
Friday might work.
Okay, I'll talk to Tanya and see what she says. I don't
All right, I'll run
think
it by
we have
Cindy.
anything going on. I might be a little bit hungover, but
It's fine. We'll give you some hair of the dog. You'll be fine.
oh yeah. Okay. Do you have another one you want to recommend?
I don't. There's not very many that I watch. I mean, I watch a lot of golf YouTube, which is not really nerdy unless you're doing the science of it. And if you're watching golf YouTube, I recommend like almost anyone from the UK. If you watch golf YouTube, you know about Good Good. Go watch them. They're fun. There's lots of drama, lots of intriguing, lots of good golf. But Rick Shields, Peter Finch, um, yeah, there's 3 or 4 others that I can't remember their names at the moment. But I mean, click on those; they'll lead you there.
All
If
right.
you don't like
Well,
golf, don't bother.
our AI overlords have some tabletop-ish questions, so let's get into
Oh,
tabletop.
all right.
If you could design your dream board game, what would the theme be and what mechanics would you include?
Hmm. I mean, a board game can be almost any theme, and you
It
can
can.
reskin the same board game into almost anything. The 30,000 different versions of Monopoly are a testament to that. One of the things I think that though I would absolutely shoehorn in without question is cooperative mode.
Hmm.
I find it, especially as I've gotten older, like we before COVID, and we're starting to do it again. We used to have sort of a board game night about once a month. You know, a group of us from around town, And I always enjoy so much more the games where even if there's like an adversarial element where at least you have teams
Hmm.
where you're working together with people to do something. Um, House on Haunted Hill is one that I really enjoy because it's a little bit random, and it has like some tactical stuff. Have you ever played it?
No, no, I
It's
haven't.
interesting. You cannot play it too well. We faked it to the point where we can kind of play two players just to get through it. But it's like there's a random element and it's everybody working together until the end when one person becomes the enemy, and then there's like a winning condition that is like, hey, this person can win or everyone else can win. And I find that really interesting. But I think the base mechanic for me is it's got to be cooperative, at least in some
Hmm.
aspect.
So my answer is going to stretch board game a little bit too. Um, Now, for some context, I had an idea that I wanted to run a YouTube series. And my answer to the question is sort of the board game version of that. But the general setup for the YouTube series is whether it was competing as individuals or teams, I wanted to sort of have people like stage it up so that here's a budget of $80 or $60. You're going to have a problem to solve. You're going to go into a dollar store or something like that and get whatever you need to build it. So, like hypothetically, let's say that you need to build a trebuchet that shoots, a certain distance, or maybe it's a competition for the teams to see who can build the better trebuchet using $50 worth of dollar store randomness. Right? Think of it more like an engineering problem solving kind of game.
So it's Storage Wars, or not Storage Wars, Junkyard Wars,
Uh,
kinda,
Kinda, yeah, yeah. But budget
but on the
DIY kind of
cheap.
on the cheap, and not all the other bullshit that kind of went around with it.
Yeah, avoid the
Like
drama.
avoid the drama, but also the special skills kind of stuff too, right? Like not everybody can weld, not everybody can, but you can flex the same muscles in the brain.
Yep.
So a board game that just is a collection, even if it's like small versions of just mundane shit, hairbrushes and toothpicks and whatever, and then some cards with engineering challenges. So you're building these, like, do you ever play the Crazy Machines games back in the day? Like some of
The
the early
Incredible
pieces.
Machine.
Incredible Machine? Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of. Just sort of a not quite like Rube Goldberg kind of esque type shit, but more, just like with duct tape and popsicle sticks and miscellaneous mundane items, try and solve these engineering challenges. I don't know. I think it'd be a lot of fun. It probably requires a very, very specific audience,
Oh yeah,
you know?
MacGyveropoly.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Question number 2. What is your opinion of using digital tools or apps for tabletop gaming, such as virtual tabletops, character sheet apps, etc.? Do they enhance or detract from the experience?
Both. They change it fundamentally.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Playing a game like D&D, just as an example, it's a completely different game, and both are good in their own ways. Both are have their negatives, but it's hard to compare them. From an accessibility perspective, like it's really hard as adults to get people around a table to play in person. So
Yes.
in my case, it's play D&D online using these tools, or don't play D&D.
Yep.
You
And
know,
that's been my experience too. Like I'm actually the our it's funny, both of my D&D games have gone on hiatus for the summer this week.
your other one just started back up.
I know. Well, we're having trouble getting people together because we're playing on Sunday evenings and weekends. Like it's just,
Yeah,
it's hard because people are traveling and they do things, and like everybody else has kids and their kids are home, so now they're doing stuff, and it's just like every weekend somebody was saying I can't make it, so it just sort of makes sense.
yeah.
I think I'm probably going to propose the idea of doing a couple of one shots to them as well.
Hmm.
And because most of them are actually local, I think I'm going to do it. Like, one of the things that I want to do is set up one of the rooms in my new house as this is where I play D&D.
Hmm.
And just have a like an in-person who's here, let's play, right? With the idea that we're going to
Yeah.
play for 3 or 4 hours and then we're going to be done.
Yeah, that'd be the challenge. And I'm a picky D&D player too. Like I don't we got groups that go on in town. Like we have game stores that run regular games, and like I've thought about going in and dropping in. There's some Adventure League stuff going on, but the
That's
type of
tough.
people that do that are like exactly the type of people I hate playing D&D with. You know, the
I
the the wannabe war gamers and just
and the I like I worship Matt Mercer. I mean, yeah. I have a funny story about Adventure League actually, because I went to play Adventure League one time and I rolled up a bard character.
started role playing and they're like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Yeah, I did. I did. It was funny because, like, my introduction to D&D, I think we've talked about this before, was very much with the wargamer crowd. Like, we did dungeon crawls as like almost a video game. Like, the goal was kill the monsters. The dungeon master
Hmm.
was trying to kill us with proper or with clever tactics from sort of level appropriate monsters. So that was the thing. Like, you did not speak in character. You said, "I ask the innkeeper what he thinks of this," or "I ask the innkeeper for rumors," and then you hear these rumors from the innkeeper. And like I don't even think that I had watched Critical Role at that point. I'm not even sure that it had come out at the point that I played Adventure League. But I thought to myself, you know what? Like, I want to role play. Like, I want to actually
Hmm.
pretend to be my character. So I went in as a bard, and it was solving a mystery. Like, we weren't even going to roll a whole lot of dice. It was like it was printed, and I mean, the dungeon master handled it quite well once he figured out what I was doing. But I remember what, like, I was doing. What's the bard cantrip? Uh, like
Like
cutting
vicious
words or
mockery,
something.
or
Vicious mockery,
yeah,
right? And I mean, I had a list. I had like literally
yeah.
handwritten out a list beforehand of things that I was going to use as vicious mockery. And I think the first one I used was, "Your mother was a hamster and your father smells of elderberries," right? And I say this to him, like, it's like, okay, so combat is starting. Everybody roll initiative. I go first, and I say, all right. I look at him and I say, and I don't even think I said I say. I just looked at him and went, "Your mother was a hamster and your father smells of elderberries." And he's like, "What?" And I'm like, "I cast vicious mockery." He's like, "Oh, okay." Right. And I mean, it went on from there, and there was a bunch of stuff, and sort of all of the other players around the table are looking at me like, "What is this guy doing? Like, where did he come from?" It was just, it
It's like
was, it
the
was sort of
the
neat.
the James Franco first time meme.
Yeah, very much like that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
kind of the problem with our local groups. Now, I don't know that we have much Adventure League going on around here, but we do have regular games. And like at the game shops, we don't have a lot of them,
Yeah.
but they tend to be the old school D&D players that try and play it more like wargaming. Like, Matt Mercer's the devil to them, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's responsible for polluting
I would
their
like to
game.
say that while I appreciate the enthusiasm that the Critical Role team brings to all of it,
Hmm.
I do, in essence, kind of agree with that assessment a little bit, right? Because it puts pressure on people to be a little bit more creative and a little bit more
Well,
outgoing than most people
so
are comfortable with.
oh yeah, yeah, and there are a few like we don't have many game shops, but there's like some cafes that run some games, and they tend to be the other end of the spectrum. A lot of young people that like their D&D experience has been watching Critical Role and getting into
Yeah.
it, and it's hard to play with people like that because they almost miss the point of what makes a lot of like the Critical Role
Yeah.
stuff good.
Yeah.
And I've run into it like I like running games for newer players, and when I bring some new players into my group, like they're often they look at what the characters in Critical Role have experienced in the campaigns, and then they write all of that as backstory. And it's like, okay, so your character's already done everything now,
Yeah.
you know. So
It's tough.
it's done. They don't
Backstories are hard though, because
backstories are hard.
you got to give enough that you have something to work with, but you have to leave it enough. Like, I mean, like you're a level 0 farmhand who's literally
Yeah,
just
yeah,
setting
yeah,
out in the world. You know, you can't have, like, you can do, hey, I was, like a low level member of the army, like, and I basically peeled potatoes for 2 years before I decided this isn't for me. But I learned to be a soldier. I just didn't really have any adventures.
yeah.
Like, you could do that, but you know,
Oh, it's definitely hard, and I'm not going to yuck anybody's yum. Like, you can. There are talented groups of players with the right chemistry to recreate the Critical Role magic, but
sure,
that can't be the bar that you hold
no,
all groups to. And it takes some of the players where that's the only D&D experience they have, like through actual plays online, some of the better ones, to really realize, well, no, every group's going to find their own thing.
yep, yes,
And my players have all found that. Like, that is not a criticism at all of my guys. But getting back to the question at hand, like playing in person with real people around a real table, my options are limited. Like, I either play at this extreme or I play at the other extreme, and I don't really want to play at either. So I play
no.
online. And because of that, I'm able to be a little bit more selective about the type of people that I play with. Like, I want to play with people that I like when we're not playing games.
Yes,
If I'm sitting across from somebody that, like, if we weren't playing D&D right now, I wouldn't want to hear them speak. Like, they're just a dick or
yeah,
whatever. you
you don't
know
want to, yeah,
if I can't stand the person, why would I want to play D&D with them? And maybe that's a little bit elitist. Maybe I'm the dick.
I don't
But,
think
like, we're
so.
all we're all here to have fun.
Yeah,
And like any other social activity, you got to have the right mix of people. Like, you got to all get along reasonably well. Like, you don't have to all
yeah,
be best friends. Like, that's the
no,
other thing that a lot of people ignore when it comes to the Critical Role thing, is like, these are people that have been both personal and professional friends and colleagues for years and years and
years,
years before you
yeah,
ever saw them
yeah.
on
They
stream.
they have already developed all of the chemistry that you see. It's not like they just do that and that's how it works. Like
Yeah.
you need to develop that over the course of years.
Yeah, and you hear the people that, quite often from the other extreme, that are like, "Oh, Critical Role scripted, obviously." They're all
Well,
actors. Like, how else would it work out this way? And you're like, no, it's the result of that type of chemistry that they have, and also the innate
um,
talent. Like, you got a bunch of voice actors around a table. You know what they're going to do?
they're going to
Act
voice act. Yeah.
well.
Well, I mean, there's also like the improv skill that exists around that table is
Yeah,
remarkable.
bonkers.
Yeah. And I mean, like I definitely don't want anyone to think that I don't like it, because I do. I love Critical Role, but it's in small doses for me, right? And
Hmm.
there's too much for me to consume of that. And it definitely has had an influence on the way that I role play and the way
Hmm.
that I DM,
Yeah.
right? Like there's no doubt that I like it's
And I haven't
elevated
actually
my game.
watched. Like, I started watching some of Campaign too. I think Tanya and I kind of petered out after. Like, this is recently watched, so I'm going back and watching old material. I think we got like 10 episodes in, and it was just like, you know what?
Eh,
No, it was great. Like, we were enjoying it, but it's just like,
it's
three
too
three and
much.
a half hours an episode kind of thing. Like, just fitting it in
Yep.
was getting hard. And Tanya and I watched like some actual play stuff. Uh, Even before Critical Role was popular, but certainly afterwards, we got into the sort of Penny Arcade and the Acquisitions Incorporated stuff. Um, if you're looking for something that's kind of good middle of the road in an actual play, don't watch the main Acquisitions Incorporated games, the stuff that they do at PAX on a stage and stuff. I mean, that's all very good. But they ran for several years a weekly stream called The C Team,
Ah,
um, that had some people that became some bigger names eventually, like Kate Welch, for instance, who ended up working for Wizards for a while and then very much not so. Kind of cut her teeth in D&D through this game, and some other charismatic people, but, like, some of them were new D&D players for episode 1. And it's a very much a different style than Critical Role, but also has a lot of sort of things, like a lot of draws, a lot of appealing merits. Like, Jerry Holkins from Penny Arcade is the dungeon master for it, and I mean, I really love him. Some people find him annoying, and I don't blame the people that find him annoying. I get why some people would, but I find him just, he's my kind of funny. He's just, the way he twists words sometimes just tickles me in the right spots. And it's not for everyone, but I would suggest that, like, if you're trying to find a minimal, middle of the ground kind of actual play to get into, Acquisitions Incorporated, the C Team, it had its run. It's over now. So like you can watch 3 seasons worth of it. You know, there's not the big body of work like there is with Critical Role. I think all 3 seasons is less than one campaign in CR worth of stuff to watch. It's basically all theater of the mind type stuff. So it's pretty easy to watch on screen too. Has all the sort of typical live show kind of things where there's some audience interaction type stuff in it. They were sort of one of the earlier ones to get into like real time audience kind of stuff, and just fun.
If you are going to watch Critical Role, I would highly recommend skipping Campaign 1 and Campaign 2 and watching Deadwood.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I didn't.
it's a short run. It's like 6 or 8 episodes. It's really it's a really good sort of dip your toe in and see if you like it.
Yeah, and I hadn't watched it actually. You know, aside from just getting into it now, the only Critical Role I'd actually watched was like the Darrington Brigade one shot.
Yes,
Yeah,
that was good. Is that the one where they fight a rubber ducky at the end?
I don't think so. No,
Because that was a live thing that they did on
yeah,
stage.
this
It
was a
was
live one as well, but I
yeah,
think it was. I think it was a different one. Anyway,
yeah. They've done it a couple of times now.
all right. How do you approach character creation in tabletop games? Do you prioritize mechanics, backstory, or a combination of both?
It's a combination for me. I generally think about, and this has evolved over the years because originally when I first started, as I say, I started playing with wargamer type people. I really focused on numbers, right? And we did like 4d6 drop the lowest in order. Those are your stats, right? And that would really drive sort of who do I think this person is.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always thought about like a character concept first. Like if you've ever read Terry Pratchett's Guards series, there's a character named Carrot who was raised by dwarves, but he's I don't know, like 6'4" or something. Like he's very obviously human, right? And he's, sort of rightful king of the land, except he's too good of a person, so he doesn't do it. And I remember creating a character based on him, and everybody in the party and the DM hated him, right? Because he was lawful good, but also kind of goofy and stupid, right? Not not stupid, but like doing the right thing in a goofy way. And I'm sure that I didn't role play it very well, but at the same time, it was just just the idea of somebody who's got everyone's best interests in mind at all times. Not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily like my party and getting us ahead. It's like I don't want to get rich. I want to do the right thing for everybody all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very annoying character. So I usually approach it with a sort of an archetype in mind, like somebody from a TV show or a movie or a book that I've read. Then I start there and then I sort of like tweak and, twiddle knobs until it gets to something that I think will be fun. And then apply rules to it until it, meets the criteria of this is a character I can play.
So I think you have to ask yourself first, what type of game are you playing in, right?
That's
Like if it's a
important.
full campaign, like you need a character that is going to be fun in session 1 but also is going to be fun in session 31. You know, if you're playing a one shot, like that's your time to get silly. A character that
Yes.
isn't going to have a lot of depth, that's got a short shelf life in terms of being annoying for other people at the table, but like in small doses is just going to be a lot of fun. I think it needs to be a balance in both cases, though. You know, um, I was watching some a video series. It actually was done by Yahtzee Croshaw from uh, does the
Zero
zero
punctuation.
punctuation stuff. The rest of the stuff that he did for Extremist. Anyway, he did it like a development series on video games where he actually did like 12 games in 12 months he had to develop, just like indie small scale games. And he did a lot of talking about like core gameplay loop, like ignoring the story of a game, ignoring the plot, the development, all of the other stuff. Like, are the things that you're doing from moment to moment fun? If they are, then build off of that. But if they haven't, then fix that first.
Yep.
So building a character that you think is going to be mechanically fun, especially if you're going to be doing it in the long haul, is interesting. And that doesn't need to mean it needs to be complicated, right?
Oh,
Sometimes it just means, can I take the mechanics of playing this character and narrate them well? Like playing something as simple as like a human fighter, most boring combination in the world, can be a lot of fun if you can have fun with it. Take those tools that are available and do something with it. Um,
tell a
one of the
story.
Yeah. Now, one of the most fun characters that I did. Have you ever? And I want to say that what's his name did a video on it. Puffin Forest
Okay. Yep.
about the build Murray kind of character builds.
No, but I remember his one level of every class character. What was
Was
what was that character called?
that absurd?
Absurd.
Yes.
Absurd.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, no. Maybe it wasn't him that talked about it. Maybe it was I'm drawing a blank on the guy's name. Another guy that does the animated spellbook
Oh, I know
stuff.
who you mean.
Um,
Zubeshu.
yes. Yeah, I think maybe he's the one that talked about the Build Mary stuff. But the idea of dice control, right? So like playing a halfling with lucky and the lucky feat,
Oh my god.
divination wizard with portent. I ended up building for one shot that I ran with my crew, where one of my players was DMing. Uh, let's see. Let me just pull it up here. So I am divination wizard 2, wild magic sorcerer 1, tempest domain cleric 4, and
Okay.
almost everything about this character was just like taking taking a roll, like like bad dice or whatever, and just being like, nope, I'm not accepting that. Whether it was taking advantage of lucky or portent or um, tied to chaos, or like there's all sorts of mechanics that kind of played well together. It's not optimal, and it would be a nightmare to keep track of in a long campaign. But for something like a small campaign, succession mini campaign, or even a one shot over a weekend, like those are the kind of things that you're probably going to get more mileage out of the mechanics than you would sort of interesting backstory that you don't have the opportunity to explore.
hmm
Um, I tried to do some one shots, and I had a hard time getting some attendance because like we were juggling multiple groups of players at the time with active games too, and I was doing it in the summer on weekends, and we got a few games going, and the whole shtick for that was that it was going to be, think of the Dungeons and Dragons version of the Expendables, the movies.
Yeah. Okay.
I ended up calling it the Lucky Sevens, but the idea is like you need to like pick a stereotype, you know, whether it's an 80s action hero stereotype, or you want to be like, this is the only game in the world where it's totally fine to play Legolas, right? Like in most
Yep.
games, if you're just going to come to a game and like Legolas lol, like that's your character,
Yeah, you're not gonna have fun.
the joke's funny for half a session, and then it's like, oh, okay, actually Legolas kind of sucks and everybody's making fun of me. But in this game, where the whole idea is like pick a shallow stereotype, because like you're going to use it for one session, the characters are
I'm
disposable.
Batman.
If you want to play Batman, play Batman.
Yep.
You know, or think of the mechanically fun kind of stuff and play it. Like that's where that stuff's really, really cool. But if you're going to be playing a campaign or something that's got like legs, you
You need.
definitely got to balance mechanically interesting with like not a deep backstory, but something that gives you like something to build off of. Your character
Something
has to
to
have
do.
motivations, right? Why is my character
Yes.
doing what they're doing? Why are they with this party of maybe they're strangers, people that all have their own agendas, but like for some reason we're going to all work together.
Yeah.
Why? Don't
Yep.
going back to what I said about some of the inexperienced players from the CR experience where they wrote all of these crazy backgrounds, like their epic story happened in the past.
Yep.
You
No, it needs to
can't do
happen in the
that,
future.
like it's okay to maybe come into your story in the middle of it, but you have to have somewhere to go.
Yeah. It's okay. It's okay to have somewhat of an epic backstory if you're doing like a short series of something starting at like level 12. Like
Hmm.
you're already like a major hero, right? The reason that you've been called is because you are a major hero and now we need your help. Like help
Yeah.
me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like Obi-Wan's story is mostly in the rearview mirror, and you're coming in for sort of the swan song part of your adventure.
Hmm.
But you can't do that for a hey, we're starting at level 1. You can do
Yeah.
it starting at level 12.
And I mean, you can certainly turn like, so, I don't always relate like epic story to high level character.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's just you've been through some shit. And I think you can do, as long as like your epic story serves as context for your character's current state, like that can work. So, the character I played with your game, for instance, Dex, like he was a pretty boring character, really. But his basic
Yeah.
setup was like, he had a bit of a military background and then he kind of realized, wait, we're kind of the bad guys.
Yep.
Fuck this. And he sort of like exiled himself from his society, and that sort of drove everything else that he was doing, which led to him, becoming an adopted parent by accident. And that sort of was his key motivation.
Hmm.
But, all the subtle stuff was like trying to atone for not only the shit that he'd done in the past, but also the shit that like his people had done in the past. And that was fine. Like there's an implication that like, oh, all kinds of shit went off, but I didn't write all that backstory. It's just like 3 sentences in a paragraph of, oh, like he worked his way up to, a military commander and then got ordered from the top to do some really bad shit, like genocidal shit. And he just fucked
Noped out.
that, turned his back to his city and home and family, and that was
Yep.
fine.
Well, and that's a reason for adventuring too, right? It's
Yeah,
the reason you're
absolutely.
here. Yeah.
But if it's just a laundry list of epic things you've achieved, and then you find that the stuff that you're going through now like doesn't marry, like, sometimes your campaign's going to start out even at the mid levels where you're whacking rats.
Yep.
And you can't have, oh, I'm the prince of such and such, and I'm, you know
Although, okay, to turn that on its head, it
you
would be
can do
interesting.
that, right? Yes.
You can do that right. I think you could play an interesting character where I am the prince of such and I've done all of these amazing things. Is just stories that you tell people to try and build yourself up could be a really interesting character.
Could be.
Yeah, but you'd have to do it right. Like you'd have to it's one of those things where if the player and the party and the DM are in on the joke, then it's a funny joke.
Yeah, and you have to do work for something like that, right? Because when the question comes up, which it will, is like, hey, we're dealing with kobolds in the sewer, man. Like, why are you here? Like, you better be able to answer that question with some bullshit
Yes.
at that point.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
like
I'm
you gotta
here
stick to the bit.
I'm here to teach you lowly newbies about how to kill kobolds in the sewer.
Yeah, and then roll badly doing it because that's the way it's got to go, right?
That's the way it's got to go. Well, I mean, the other thing is too is that you could like immediately it could become apparent that you're completely incompetent at everything. And then you've got sort of two paths to go. You can either, come clean and go, all right, yeah, I'm just like you guys, which is, good for character development,
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
or you could completely go the other way and deny reality entirely entirely, which is another kind of character development, which lets everyone else develop a little bit before.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, I think like if you're going to play that, you do have to come clean.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be that denouement of your character to say like, I've realized the error of my ways and now I'm going to
Yeah.
grow as a person.
Yeah. Like nobody likes a poser. So if you're going to play a poser, you got to, you know,
There's, you got to go one of two ways. You have to
yeah.
lean into it super hard, or you have to give it up fairly early.
Yep.
Two
Or you
options.
do the real reverse twist and like, when everybody finally thinks that you're about to come clean, the rest of the party finds out that no, actually it was all kind of true. You were just an idiot or something, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Or
yeah,
I'm
you
under
were
a
a prince
curse.
and yeah, you did all of these things, but you sucked at all of it. Like, the only reason you've still got your head and you weren't thrown out a window is because you were smart enough to run away or something, right? Like,
Something, yeah.
I apologize if you hear my dog barking out there. I think Tanya just got home and let her out, and she's got the zoomies or something.
Yeah, well, dogs will be dogs.
All right, a couple more questions, then I think we'll call it a night.
It's been a long one.
Discuss. It has. Discuss your favorite fantasy or science fiction book series, and I will actually extend that to be other things as well, just because I think that's more interesting. So, discuss your favorite fantasy or science fiction series that you feel would make an excellent setting for a tabletop campaign.
Okay, so I don't know about the favorite, but here's a slightly controversial answer. Have you ever read this series? I forget who wrote them, but they were like a pulp series from back in the 80s. And the first one, I think, they made a couple of movies out of it. I think it was called Tribesmen of Gore. It's, oh my
Not too
God,
familiar.
it is the most racist and misogynist bullshit that you have ever encountered in your entire life. Basically, the premise of the entire series of books is that the Earth has a perfect counter Earth on the other side of the sun, and we've never seen it because it's in perfect orbit on the other side of the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Every once in a while, some kind of conjunction happens, and people from Earth get transported to Gore, which is the name of the other place. And on Gore, it is accepted that women are built only to be slaves.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them don't know it. And like, it's absolutely awful. Like, it's written by somebody that you think is maybe 12 years old.
Yeah.
But a lot of the sort of, if you chop that part out of it, and I'm not sure that you can, the idea of a counter Earth where every once in a while people go right. I think it would be more interesting to have Earth as a setting for that science fiction series, and someone from that society came here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I
Oh
don't like.
shit!
There's
I
a.
remember there was
It's
something that
terrible.
recently came out, and one of the D&D ish podcasts that I listened to, Dungeon Master of None, talked about it. I can't remember the name of it, but it had sort of a similar vibe, but it was sort of an Irish Celtic kind of thing where there was this convergence that had happened, and then there was just like
Yes.
this fairy kind of fey city thing, but like coexisting with, oh god, I can't remember the name of it.
Is it? Is it? Was it? There was a novel by Guy Gavriel Kay that was sort of a some students from the University of Toronto get transported into the past or an alternate
No,
universe
it
kind of
wasn't
thing.
that.
No,
This had very much sort of a sort of a fey fairy, like fairies existing in on Earth kind of thing.
I know
Um,
that. What's his name? He did Macros the Black. Uh,
oh, this
who's
is one of
this?
those things where, like, fairies that could actually do magic, but they were treated as like second class citizens. It was sort of an
Oh,
exploration of like
okay,
racism and
right.
whatnot. Like, it definitely had a lot of sort of political overtones and whatnot, but it had that kind of vibe. I mean, another one that's interesting is just the Witcher stuff. Like I know
Yeah.
everybody's played the video games, but like if you get into the books or the show's starting to explore it now, like the convergence of the spheres and whatnot, it got sort of touched on a little bit more at the end of the prequel show, which oh man, they did that one dirty. Um,
Yeah, I don't have Netflix anymore, so I haven't watched those.
Look at you being responsible and not just downloading stuff. What happened to you,
Yeah.
man?
I grew up. I got gray in my beard now. Part of it is just there's too much media to consume. I mean, like the thing is that like when I think about settings for role playing games, I often think about like really complicated ways for things to work. Like I really enjoy the Dragarin, the Daenerys and what you call it. What the
Oh
heck
yeah,
is
yeah.
that
The
called?
the Song of
Game of
Ice and Fire,
Thrones.
Game of Thrones. Yeah,
Yeah, like I really enjoyed the books. I haven't actually watched the TV show. I watched the first season and went,
hmm
hey, that was pretty much like the book. I bet you the rest of it'll be good. And then I heard some things and went, I'm not watching the rest of that.
yeah, yeah. You know what? For the first few seasons, even like everything up until the point where they got ahead of George R. R. Martin was fantastic.
Yeah, well, I mean, at that point now they're making stuff up, but I like the idea of doing like a complicated setting like that. And my experience as both a player and as a DM says to me that you know what, the world needs to be simpler than that.
hmm
Like there's a lot of sort of inclination for me at least to do things where there's lots of shades of gray and you want to like explore things and how things work. But you know what? It's a game. Things need to be very much good versus evil, right? Whether like orcs are evil, it's just taken as for granted. Don't explore the are orc children evil? Do they become evil? Like
Yeah,
you either have to have good and evil, or you have to have a very sort of mature table that can go. We can have this exploration of
yeah,
things.
and that's like, and I definitely don't like the sort of racial typecasting sort of direction. You know, orcs are
I
evil,
don't
goblins are
either.
evil, and I get why some people do it because it's shorthand, right? Like,
Yes.
but it definitely takes a mature group of players to sit around a table and fit into a game that has a lot of nuance,
Yes.
you know. Um, and like
And
the worlds that
communicating
I
that is
set up,
hard.
yeah, like the worlds that I set up in my homebrew probably have a lot more gray in them, and I think I don't know, like you still need to have like an immediate carrot, and then like you stage your lore and world out, and like this is the immediate stuff, this is sort of the longer term stuff and the real long term stuff, and I think if you make the immediate stuff a little bit more black and white and cut and dry and give that other stuff time to stew, maybe you can pull it off, but it's definitely hard to drop people into a game where it's like, oh, for any of what you're doing initially to make sense, you almost got to read a novel before session zero.
Well, there's also like when you think about like how the game works, like you need adversary, whoever
hmm
that is. It could
Yeah.
be like because there's all of the narrative things. It's like man versus self, it's versus the environment versus blah blah blah, right? And I mean, in real life, honestly, most of the time it's not good versus evil. It's just us versus them, and whoever us is us,
hmm
right? And whoever them is the bad guys.
Yep.
But if you lived over there, then us is a different group of people, right?
hmm
And in a game, you kind of want it to be a little bit more obvious who the bad guys are.
Yeah, unless it's your goal to create that sort of moral ambiguity and have your players question themselves. It's like, hey, are we actually the good guys here or something?
Yeah.
But you
Did we
have
just
to,
slaughter a whole town of people who weren't really bad people? Oops.
yeah. Oops. You
Yeah,
know,
we tried it. It was hard and it was difficult and
no,
people felt bad. So,
yeah. Um, I think the universe that I would pick. Now there were technically books written about it, but it's a video game universe and series, and that's the Mass Effect universe.
mhm.
One of the challenges with taking the fantasy universes or sci-fi universes or whatever that we love is that take Lord of the Rings, for example. Like, Lord of the Rings doesn't work if there's 156 Gandalfs running around, right?
There are 7 wizards.
You know, it's hard to allow people to play what they want, right? I want to be Gandalf,
Nope.
right?
Let's
And
face it, they'd all be Legolas anyway.
right, but whatever. Heroic character X, it's hard to let them be what they want when they're leaning on like the most heroic of heroic archetypes and then create a sense of progression.
Yep.
Now, you can do it for one shots, easy.
Sure. Oh,
Or you
yeah.
can put a neat spin on it. Like there's nothing better. I don't know if I've ever had asked you if you've watched it, but Dimension 20 did Tales from the Blood Keep or Escape from the Blood Keep, sorry, which was sort of a parody of the bad guys from Lord of the Rings. It was a mixture of like Dimension 20 and some crit role. Like Matt Mercer was a player in that game. Brendan Lee Mulligan ran the game. Erika Ishii and a couple of other players were there. If you haven't watched it, watch it. It's like 6 episodes, 7 episodes, or something like that of just absolutely brilliant fun. Would be hard to recreate as like your own game kind of thing. But it's an interesting take on doing something like that. But the nice thing about the Mass Effect universe is it's like an interesting universe from like a, alien races and sort of cultural standpoint and like exploring different types of archetypes, but there isn't this crazy sort of like power imbalance. Like even the main sort of heroic story that happened in the series, Commander Shepard and his crew, was just this ragtag group of heroes that persevered, in the face of all sorts of adversity to
Hmm.
ultimately save the day. The bad guys were big and sort of formidable, but the heroes are just
People.
regular people, whether they're humans or Krogan or Asari or whatever the different races are. And that particular universe just lends itself so well, I think, to exploring all the different kinds of gameplay you could work into a tabletop role playing game. Whether you want to get into like political drama, diplomatic type gameplay, whether you want to get into, espionage and sneaky rogue stuff, whether you want to do combat type stuff that is, heavily focused on infantry style combat, whether you want to, melee, ranged, whatever, whether you want to get into ship combat and deal with some of that kind of stuff. Like it has something for all of that. And
Yep.
there's no obvious sort of like, you could be Commander Shepard in that game, like play that type of character
Yep.
because he's just a regular guy, and when everybody else gave up, he chose to fight, and that's what made him great. And he had the right crew with him, and there's more stories in that universe to be told. Like their big epic sort of story that wrapped at the end of Mass Effect 3.
No spoilers. I haven't played through it.
I tried, or I started it. We never really got anywhere with it, but I started running a game, not using D&D as a system, but with my own little homebrew system that sort of picked up immediately after the end of Mass Effect, because like it ends with world changing shit happening, and
Yep.
now it's like, oh shit, now what?
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
and
There's there's a few other things like that that could work. Like I really enjoy the idea of a cyberpunk game.
mhm,
The trouble with those kinds of things though is that like there's so much like real world type stuff baked into it,
mhm,
right? Mass Effect to a degree as well. Like you're doing something like sort of semi modern with extra technology, which may as well be magic.
mhm,
Um, but yeah, it's an interesting idea to think that like the problem with starting those things up is that like who are the archetypes that exist in that space.
mhm.
It would be interesting to see a fantasy story with a group of people who are just regular people becoming the heroes.
Mhm.
And I don't know if it's been done.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, there's. I know there is. I have never played it, but actually an RPG for Firefly. Like that'd be another one that we've talked about before. Would be a great sort of
Yep.
universe to explore. You know, you've got lots of avenues for like escalating bad guys and stuff.
Yep.
Um, and everybody else in that world's just people trying to
Trying to get by.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know, and that doesn't mean that you don't create characters that are special. You know, the characters are special and they're skilled in their own way, but it's not um you know, it's not Gandalf around every corner kind of thing, right? Like it's
Not
you know,
everybody's a Jedi.
yeah. Um you know, the games that I've been running most recently, it's sort of a homebrew world built on top of Forgotten Realms, and like we're all based out of this main city named Hope, which was built on the ruins of Waterdeep. And sort of the big contrast is that like we're in Waterdeep, like there would have been a wizard standing on every corner hawking magic wares and doing spells for shit. Like it starts off at least as a low magic world where all of that shit's gone and starting to bubble back up through the surface. So it allows your characters to be special, right? Like you're one of the very few magic users in the world. And I that can all kind of develop, but I don't, it's really hard, you know. What was it when the Incredibles, when Syndrome said, you know, when everybody's super, nobody is.
Yep. Everybody's special is just another way of saying nobody is.
Yep.
Yep. I don't know. There's merit too, though, in everybody being super powerful. Like imagine like the Immortals in Marvel kind of did this, where like here we are on the moon and everybody's got a superpower. Yeah. Like what happens when everyone has a superpower? It's more difficult to manage, I think. But it's an interesting story, I think.
Mm-hmm.
We should wrap up fairly shortly here.
Yeah. No, I think we'll skip the last question actually, um, and leave it at that. That was the pod bag as brought to you by our AI overlords. We'll get back to real questions from real humans ish next episode. So if you want to submit your question to us, it's podbag at nerdingundertheinfluence.com. We'd love to hear from you. Uh, Catch us on YouTube. We've been doing some new YouTube shorts. Put these live on the YouTube channel if you're listening to it in audio form, or if you're listening to it on YouTube, catch us on any of your usual podcasty places. Apple, Google, Spotify. I Googled us today just to see if like
Oh
the
yeah,
website was showing up in search results, and there's like all of these other aggregators that have picked up the show, just scraping like the Apple Podcasts feed. It's like,
nice.
yeah,
Next week we might be replaced by ChatGPT.
it's true.
I am a robot.
Hey, if you want to give us a review or like us, that'd be awesome too. You know,
Yeah,
only if you like what you hear. If you didn't like it, well, tell us to fuck off or something.
yeah, or anything. Interact with us in some way.
All right, man. It's been good chatting to you. We'll catch you later. I'm going to roll that out.